Thank you.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, yeah. We're getting ready to start. Yeah. No.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Sabattis Primary School closure public hearing. First, we're just going to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand up. Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so this evening we have a lot of information to go over with you to discuss the decision to send to the voters a question regarding closure of Sabattis Primary. We're going to see if we can get, is it on? Did you turn it on? I did give her the directions, but we're that's what happens when I get the directions to run technology. Okay, so we wanted to go over a little background history on what our board has been doing and with Katie, our superintendent, as well as our admin and directors. So last year we had a consolidation committee that all formed together, and we had quite a few members, 25-ish, something like that. We had representatives from all 3 towns, school board reps, select board reps, community reps. I think that was about it, but a good representation from each town. And we went over everything having to do with our 2 schools, our elementary schools, Libby Tozier and Sabattis Primary. At the end of that committee, the recommendation to the board was to close Sabattis Primary. The board did take up, or I'm sorry, the committee did take up going through potentially closing both buildings. But then we went ahead with just proceeding with 1 building at the time. And we had another vote. And we were going to be doing another committee. And due to the timeline here that we're going to go over, what we had decided in November, I don't have that date, right? It was a November board meeting, and we all voted to close Sabattis Primary to get that out to the voters. So that brought us to January 8th, where the board made that vote, unanimous vote, to take this to the voters and see if that's what we wanted to do. And in order to do that, we had to obtain information to present to the DOE. So there was a huge report, a lot of information that was provided. I think that is available online. Yep, that's right. It was put out for public comment. Yep. So that was January 29th, and on February 20th is when we received notification that the paperwork that had been submitted was approved. And we were able to move forward with this closure option. So on February 26th is when we called the referendum election and signed the warrants. And that brings us here to March 19th, our public hearing, to just give you all the information that we've had this entire time going over, debated, contemplated to arrive at this decision. And our referendum vote is scheduled for April 8th. And I believe I've seen at least Wales and I believe Sabattis have put out absentee ballot information. And Litchfield has too. Thank you. I just missed that one. Okay, so I also wanted to note before we do move on to that question, though, that is going to be presented. You could stay there, though, because I don't really have anything for it. Is we are also working diligently on 2 budgets. So as we are in budget season, we have our budget workshops, which is right after this meeting, by the way. And you're more than welcome to stay and participate in that as well. Bless you. We are working on 2 budgets, one if Sabattis Primary were to stay open and one if we were to close it. This presentation that we are sharing is available on our website under the Sabattis closure vote icon, and of course that budget information is on our budget page. Okay, so then that brings us to the referendum question. So it is going to ask if you favor authorizing the school board to close Sabattis Primary. It's a little different than a budget referendum. And unlike the budget vote, if one town votes in support of closure, it passes. So in order for the referendum question to fail, meaning it would stay open, all 3 towns must vote in favor of doing that. Anything else you want me to say? I should say. So the amount in question, there is an amount on there that is based on the actuals expended last year for the operations of the Sabattis Primary School. The DOE has approved that amount and authorized the board to continue with the closure process. All right, thank you. We are going to go over, Katie, I'm not going to take any credit for any of that. Katie's going to go over all of the information. We have some maps out back as well. They contain the footprints, the blueprints of our buildings in question. We don't have the middle school or the high school up there because they're out of scope. So Katie's going to go through that. And I think that's it, right?
Thank you, Nicole. So yes, there's a lot of information, and if we don't get everything answered or we don't have all the answers, we'll make sure we'll capture those and get them online for you. So as Nicole pointed out, there was a consolidation committee that did a lot of work on looking at the 2 buildings, Libby Tozier and Sabattis Primary. They're the ones with the most need for capital improvement, and so really digging deep, they toured the buildings. We put out openings for people to come see the buildings. I see members in the audience that were on that committee. And so coming to the conclusion that at some point, those 2 schools may need to close. So when we talked about which school, there were factors that played, which you'll hear through the presentation of why was Libby Tozier chosen to be the one to stay open. And so what we did determine is we can fit Sabattis Primary, the staff, the students, into those 2 schools, and I'm going to explain how we're doing that. So there's no reduction in teaching staff. We have 5 kindergarten teachers, 2 pre-K teachers. We have 5 first grade teachers, 5 second grade teachers. And next year we're due to have 4 third grade teachers and 5 fourth grade teachers. And so that remains the same moving into this school. So we made sure that we obviously could fit. We cannot close both schools because we can't fit in. We can't close Libby Tozier because there's not enough room to fit into the other schools. So that will be a long-term plan about what we're going to, what the district plans to do moving forward around addressing Libby Tozier. Okay, so we're going to open a page. Thank you, Norma-G. I'm going to go back. And just like, afterwards, we're going to take a break before the workshop. If you want to look at the maps, you can see how the schools are laid out. Okay. Oh, we're bringing up the document. Yes. Sorry. That's okay. So there were questions through the budget season last year. There are rooms empty at Carey Ricker. We heard that. There's rooms open in Carey Ricker. Why is that happening? There will be no rooms open at any of these schools. These 2 schools will be at full capacity. And so that was one of the considerations around, can we fit? So as I said, Libby Tozier would have kindergarten, first grade. And the teacher number stays the same. These are approximate kindergarten teachers, kindergarten students. If you do, I'm going to put a plug out there. If you have a student that qualifies for kindergarten, we are looking for sign-ups, enrollment. I see Jan nodding her head. Yes. So that is just an average of what we've seen for our class sizes, so that's in there, and then our first grade, okay? Then our staffing, we will have a principal, 10 teachers, 2 special ed teachers, our ed techs, our school counselors, our social worker, there'll be 2 each, and they will be deciding what the best schedule is to meet the students' needs. So right now, Spatus Primary School Counselor and Social Worker helps support the middle school. So there still is a need to support the middle school, and we recognize that. And so this is a team here that's going to be working out how to best meet student needs. Then we'll have the secretary, a nurse, and then our specialists, music, art, PE, and library. Right now, they go to all 3 schools. So going to these 2 schools that are very close in proximity makes it much easier for them to service students. They don't have the traveling time. They're not moving from 3 different schools. That's what the consolidation is helping, is how to have our resources in 2 locations that are in close proximity. Then we have an IT person that will be covering both the schools, and then custodial staff and food service. So that's what Libby Tozier will look like. So you're probably wondering, well, where did pre-K go? So we're going to go to the next. Okay. So Carrie Ricker will have pre-K, and there was a lot of discussion on pre-K. I mean, these are our first little learners coming in, and so we're looking, when you go over to the maps, pre-K is going to be located behind the gymnasium. So if you've been to Carrie Ricker, there are 2 classrooms behind the gymnasium. So that's where pre-K will be, and that gives them their own area. It gives them a separate entrance, because remember, buses come midday to drop off our, pick up our AM students and drop off our PM students, and for parents. So they will have their own area there. But they're also still in close proximity to Libby Tozier, so teachers can still be collaborating, students can still go down and visit, so they can still continue partnerships. Then you see 2nd grade will come in, 2nd grade looking at being on the 1st floor of Carrie Ricker, and then we have our 3rd grade and our 4th grade. And so you can see those numbers there for the average class sizes. And I always warn people with average class sizes, that's taking the number of students in the class and dividing by the classroom teachers. But our students receive services, and so at all times may not be that number of students, because students go to Title I services, they go to special education services. So so that's not really what is going on at every period, like what's happening at our literacy block, our math block, but it does give you a sense of the average class sizes. That will have a principal, and then this is an addition, which is a dean position. We have a classroom teaching position that is at the middle school that would move into funding the dean position. This would be a position that is recognized on a teacher contract, mostly to support students. So remember, because Carrie Ricker is going from 2 grades to 4 grades, it gives a principal support in supporting the teachers, the students, and so that is an additional position that Carrie Ricker has not had, but it's not increasing the budget significantly because it's being paid with the teaching position that is available. Then we have the teachers, special education teachers, our ed techs, our school counselor, our social worker. Remember, they're sharing. Those 3 buildings are going to be looking at. A secretary, a nurse, the specialist again, the IT, custodial, and food service. And we'll get more involved in that when I get to another slide. Right now, we have 4 nurses and 1 medical assistant that is at the medical assistants at Carrie Ricker. And then our nurses are at Libby Tozier and Sabatis Primary. So we will be eliminating the medical assistant, and the schools will all have a nurse. Okay? Okay. So maintenance needs. So this, I thought, we really need to make crystal clear. We're not saying Libby Tozier is in great condition, right? As you heard, the consolidation committee recommended both schools closing. The difference is we can now focus on one school rather than how are we going to fix both schools, Sabattis Primary and Libby Tozier. So this allows us to really be thoughtful about how are we going to fund the things that are needed at Libby Tozier. Okay? So we have put in a major construction application to the Department of Education to see where we fall on help with state-funded project. So we will not know where Libby Tozier falls on that list until August. Just so you know, there's limited funding around major construction, and we're hearing there's close to 100 applications that have applied. So we don't know where we will end up, but it's important that we get on the list. Okay? So we want you to know, and the board wants you to know, we know things have to be improved at that building. One thing we're going to be doing first off with this current budget, when we're looking at where we can do some savings to try to support removing the carpet, doing stuff with the flooring, that's a high priority. Then we're talking, so you can see this here, we're getting things ready, and this timeline has moved up since this was published. We're going to try to have that done in June. So if you approve to close it, we're going to be working hard to get teachers packed up, stuff stored, so we can do some of this maintenance work, like to remove the carpets and fix the flooring. The other things that need to be done are the windowsills, the building envelope, and so we are going to be working with the board about a capital improvement fund. So taking some of those funds, instead of saying to the taxpayer, we need more money, taking tax dollars that we've already collected that are sitting in our fund balance and allocating that to fixing things that need to be fixed at Libby Tozier. So that you'll hear later when we talk about a capital improvement fund, which I know all of you in your town meetings talk about your capital improvement funds all the time to help support you, just like we would be asking to support the schools. Then the big projects is HVAC for air quality, and the roof needs to be done. These are two big projects. And we know that school revolving loans are coming back out again. They go every other year. So the year before, we applied for ADA. So there'll be some ADA work at Libby Tozier and Sabattis Primary. And then there'll be another application put in because the cycle is going to start up next year again. And there'll be applications to see if we can qualify for having these two projects done through SRRF funds. But that would all come to voters to decide if that's the avenue you want to go. So we have it on our timeline of what needs to be completed at that school. And so we want folks to hear that we want a great learning environment for our staff and students. So anticipated savings, staffing, there is savings with staffing, even though most of the staff is going to go to either Carrie Rick or Libby Tozier. We have some reductions in food service and custodial, the health assistant, which you already heard me talk about, and the IT position, because we have an IT position at Sabattis Primary, and so that position would not be needed. And so with the reduction, there's also opportunity. So it's not just a full reduction, but how can we also support Carrie Ricker, who's going from 2 grades to 4 grades. So there's an increase to support with custodial and food service, but there's still a savings, which you'll hear later when we go through the budget presentation. We also see maintenance operational costs. That's a big one. So that is where we're not going to have to support what those operational costs, electricity, the maintenance, the daily maintenance, electrical, those things. And then fuel, because our transportation is huge. Right now, for folks who don't have students in the district, our buses go here, there, and everywhere, right? And a big thing is we do big transfer at SPS. So buses will go to Sabattis Primary to bring them over to Carrie Ricker to then put them on buses that go to different areas of Litchfield. We then have a bus come back to Sabattis Primary where the child care after school program is. And we know parents, we have one parent, Doug Bumpus, who goes all over. I think he spends close to an hour in his car, but you know, he starts at one school, at the middle school, then he goes to Carrie Ricker, then he goes to SPS, and he goes, so that will eliminate where we have the elementary in one area. You know, yes, Sabatis is going to be traveling, but you won't have to travel back and forth, back and forth. So we see that as a positive. And then, of course, deferred maintenance. So yes, we have a savings in this budget if Sabatis closes, those operational costs. But long term, we're not having to worry about how are we going to fund replacing the roof, the boiler, the windows, the plumbing, and playground. That's off the books now. Now we can focus on supporting Libby Tozier. Okay, and sure. Sabatis, primary. We're going to get to that. I have a slide on that. So hold on. Okay, next slide. Okay, pros. So we see a lot of positives. The board wouldn't be recommending this if we didn't see a lot of positives. So the positives are we're locating our pre-K 4 in Litchfield. It's on a campus feeling. The schools are side by side. That's a big positive. We're maximizing the space. We're looking at every inch of those buildings to make sure we can program for students. Then we have our resources. So our UA, our specialists, our instructional coaches, our special education program are spread out. Trying to replicate the programming at 3 different schools is a challenge. So bringing them together in 2 schools allows us to look at those resources and best program for students. I already talked to you about pre-K. The before and after care will be located at Libby Tozier. This puts them right next to the students they serve. So students that might be in 5th and 6th grade that are going, they will obviously transfer into Carrie Ricker to go to the before and after care to Libby Tozier. But we see that as a positive. The student bus times will be reduced because we're eliminating the transfer at Sabatis Primary School. So that should help definitely minimize student times. We're also exploring the start time and close end times of school too. That'll be brought to the board if it's approved for the closure. Then we have focus on capital improvement. I already spoke to this. This allows us to focus on 1 school that has high needs rather than 2 schools. And then reduce the school budget and the impact on taxes. So as Nicole said, we're running 2 budgets right now, one with it open and one with it closed. And so you've already heard we're going to have savings. So obviously the budget that has SBS closed is smaller than the one with it open. But you'll see all that. If you go to our budget page, you can see all of our, it's as transparent as you can get. Line by line, you can see where the savings are, where the increases are. So the question that you had about what happens to Sabatis. So what happens if it closes? Well, I didn't have a chance today. I watched half of the meeting at Sabatis Town meeting yesterday, and I didn't get to the part I was hoping to get to. So some of you probably watched it last night. But the town of Sabatis will have first refusal. And I know there's already discussions around people who are interested in looking at that building. So tune into the Sabatis Town meetings. I know they started discussions last night about certain things. You were there. I saw you on there. Yes. So there is conversation going on about how do we use this building as a town. So the town, we would transfer the town to have the building and the property. That would be a transfer. If the town of Sabatis says, no, we're not interested in the building, we have to offer to charter schools that our students attend. So we would notify those charter schools and say, we have a building and property available for purchase. Are you interested? If they say we're not interested, the RSU will sell the property. So you would put it on the market and then sell it and then use that revenue. And they're probably move it into their fund balance or however they want to designate it. But that's what's happened. But there's been discussion. We went to Sabatis Primary's town select board to tell them what was going on, and we also attended Litchfield's as well. So they would decide how they want to best use the building. Okay. And so now it's your turn to ask questions and give comments. And there's a microphone, so you can just come up to the microphone and we'll do our best to answer.
Name's Ron Curran. Is this on? if we do anything with that school, the town, that will still be a tax burden to the town, right? You're talking about selling it. The understanding I heard through the grapevine is they were gonna make low-income housing out of it. Is there any truth to that?
I think that's a question for the town of Sabattis. We have no plans or information regarding what they may do with it once it either they accept it, or if we end up selling it, it would go to whomever the buyer is, and what they choose to do with it.
So that's an issue that hasn't been resolved regardless.
Right. I told you, I tried to watch the town meeting last night, so I said, it's right online. You can go right online, and I think they talked about it in the second hour of the meeting. Wait, Oh, okay.
It didn't get discussed.
So watch their agenda. They have folks that wanted to speak to the select board about its use.
If the town, I don't want to take the microphone here.
No, that's
but
all right.
If the town, a town, votes to close the school, what would be the timetable?
So this year.
It would be closed and we would only open the 25-26 school year with Libby Tozier and Carrie Ricker.
One more question.
That's okay.
My
This is why
granddaughter
you're having
went
a hearing.
pre-K and kindergarten at Libby Tozier.
Currently, yes.
When there was pickup, because you had insufficient amount of bus drivers, the line would go all the way up 197 on both sides of the street. How would you possibly handle that at Carrie Ricker also, by the way, when they do pickups there? Because my granddaughter would do field hockey, and it was down all the way to Gowls.
Yeah. That's definitely going to be one we're going to have to look at. We're hoping, because the schools are close in proximity, more students will be riding the bus, which we are planning on. Because right now, a lot of parents don't have them ride the bus because they're off picking up a student in another school to help the bus. So we're hoping, because it's in one location, that there'll be less pickup. However, you're right, people like to pick up their students. We've had to work on how are we going to do the pattern, the traffic pattern is definitely going to have to be under consideration.
As I said, the reason we were bringing my granddaughter and picking her up was that there was insufficient bus drivers, or there were
Right.
illnesses
Right.
with the bus
Yes.
drivers.
Yeah.
And the line was significant. And it was very unsafe, to be honest.
Yeah.
They did a good job. They were herding the chickens, getting them in the right lines and all that type of stuff. But the fact of the matter, it was very inconvenient.
Yes.
I would get there at 20 of, so you were sort of in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And one time I sat across the street, and it took almost 45 minutes for every kid to be picked up.
Yeah. We hear you. Yeah.
So
We've
I have a concern. Libby Tozier is a nice little school.
Mm-hmm.
So's the primary school, which, by the way, has the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot drive on Pond Road when the kids come out of the school.
Right.
None of those issues are being addressed.
Yeah.
We're talking about closing schools, and I understand consolidation. But I got on your website, maybe I was on the wrong link. I couldn't get the information you're talking about in terms of costs.
Okay.
And the maintenance, I was a maintenance manager for 27 years. I never put my budget in for a roof the same year.
Right.
We would make a plan 5 to 7 years, and there were no surprises. We would allocate money every year for whatever major capital investment it was, and you're quoting $357,000 savings. That's why I asked you, if the town is required to do the demolition and the remediation on any product that might be found there, asbestos or whatever the case may be, the cost is going to be significant. And I feel, and this is my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're trying to get another new school built. That's how I feel. I think you want another school. And after the last runaround we had last year, that was total insanity. It was insanity. We were talking about increases of taxes in the town of Sabattis by $376. That was right from the Board of Selectmen, if that would have gone through. You know what? My taxes went up $368 anyway. So that would have been an additional cost. So when we talk costs, are we really getting an accountant to crunch these numbers? Are we sitting in a room, and I'm not picking on anybody here, but do we have someone with the expertise to really look at what the costs are going to be over a period of time and how it's going to affect and impact this town? Because every time I go to the town meeting, they want a new fire truck, they want more firemen, they want more police chiefs, and they keep quitting because they can't stand working for the organization we have in Sabattis. So I don't have a lot of confidence that this was well thought out, because since I moved back to Sabattis 8 years ago, all I heard, let's close Libby Tozier and let's close Sabattis Elementary School. That's 8 years. I don't know how much you were talking before then, but that's when I moved back into the town. So I don't have a warm and fuzzy right now. And I will look at all your information you have on the website, and I will objectively look at it. But the numbers are going to have to be correct, and I'm very, very suspicious, because I've worked for international corporations where they say one thing, and when it hits the floor, it's much more disruptive than it was initially sold to us. Thank you.
Thank
Good evening. I'm Robert English from Wales. I'd like to follow up a little bit on my shipmates' conversations. And the consolidation committee, yes, understands that at some point in the not too distant future, we are going to have a new school. You can only prop up an old building for so many years. And I sat up there for 27, 28 years. I've had a lot of briefings on the conditions of these buildings. We put some money in the budget proposal to go and actually hire people to come in and give us a full review. And that money got taken out of the budget in order to lower the dollar amount so we could get it to pass. So there has not been an assessment of the real total needs of either of those two buildings in a long time. And when we brought the numbers up, when we were looking at new construction, people gotten crazy and said that the numbers that we had from experts at that time were overblown. I think I was chair at the time, and I even got accused of being on the take. So there are issues. Now, I've been away for 8 months, something like that. I think Matt's doing a great job. He's got Facebook going out there and keeping people informed. But I remember on the consolidation committee that we looked at closing both because there was room. All right. And now tonight you're saying you can't close both because there's not room. So a year ago there was room, and now there's not. So consistency of the storyline means a lot. And then I just addressed the capital reserve fund. I did this often on the board. So the capital reserve fund would come out of the money that we collect for taxes for a school year that we don't actually have to spend. Normally that money is returned back 2 years later to reduce the tax burden. And that's what we've done for 28 years, 29 years. That kind of got a little out of whack for a while, and we got a big hit when we consolidated because we gave back too much money, and it took us a little while to get up. So what you're doing with the capital, you're taking money that would have been reducing the school budget in 2 years, basically, and putting it in a fund, and you're going to have to raise those additional monies to keep it up. It's pros and cons to it. I look at it this way. I'm an old guy. I pay my taxes, and if I overpay because they don't need it, I'd like it back. I don't necessarily want to go and have my money kept to go and support a project that might be 20 years down the road, where neither I or my children or grandchildren will reap any benefit. Others will, there's no doubt, and that's part of it. So there's a lot about this. My biggest concern has been, and I voiced it, is we're going to spend an awful lot of money improving either one of those old schools. And the committee really said, rip the Band-Aid off and close them both. But that didn't fly out the end of the committee report, right? And Doug did a good job of heading up that committee. Thank you, Joe. So you're teetering the line here. We can't back here, at least I can't. Maybe my eyes are too old. I couldn't read any of those things hardly because it's too far away. I don't know. You didn't want to make sure none of us sat in the front row of the class, so you were all in the back row back here. But I couldn't see, so I don't know what the bottom line was. 1.7 million, like that in repairs. Is that what I kind of looked at?
Yes.
So that's 1.7 in known and in last year's dollars, right? Or 2 years ago dollars. I just had a new roof put on, a trailer. Cost me a lot more when I swiped my debit card today than it would have 2 years ago. So these costs are going up. So the 1.7 is probably a number that's way under, just because construction, that stuff is all going up. So we're going to put a lot of money into an old school that's only going to let it creep along for a little bit. And because of what it's used for, it is going to have to be upgraded, and upgraded to the point where you can't upgrade that physical building. And just as a side, is there any discussion about the utilities that are provided to the other building that's not part of the RSU, and having those returned, those costs returned to the town and not to Wales or Sabatis taxpayers to go and support that senior center that's attached to the building, but the RSU pays for the utilities, heat and electricity. So there's a cost savings there if we just sever those lines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Waterman from Sabatis. I don't usually give out my approximate age, but I see a bunch of classmates from Webster Elementary School in the building tonight. The name on the poster over there got changed probably a few years back from Webster Elementary to Sabatis Elementary. I had a concern of what was going to happen to the building, and that got answered. If the town takes it over, it still needs that same boiler and same roof, apparently, which doesn't necessarily, that'll have to be a tough decision, I guess, Bob, for Sabatis residents. My main question is, and I don't want to stir up a hornet's nest, but if we invest all this money into a physical plant in Litchfield, what is the status of, what is our legal status of, if Litchfield ends up getting out of the union, what happens to this building that we are now dumping all of this money into to remodel?
So from what we understand, if Litchfield were to decide to withdraw, the debt that that school carries, those schools carry, would go to Litchfield. There would be negotiations around, what's really important to the DOE is that the students of RSU4 are educated. So there would be negotiations on how will they be educated in the buildings that are left. And so it's not as simple as they take the buildings and wave goodbye. You have to talk about it as, and it can take up to more than 2 years to negotiate how to withdraw and what's left and what are the resources. But the debt would go to Litchfield if there was debt on those buildings.
So any bond we take out to remodel them,
Yes.
whatever's left on that would be the debt that would transfer with that?
Yes.
Okay. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I lived in the town of Sebago, not in Raymond. I lived in the town of Sebago, which is on the west side, very old town. We went through this stuff at the school for quite a few years. I lived there 16 years. And one of the solutions they did is they built, for lack of a better term, modular homes. And what they did is they built them and removed them as the population of the school increased or decreased. In relative terms, my taxes were 1/3 what I'm paying in Sabatis. And we had two guys that always sat in the back, two old duffers. I loved them. And we used to call them the two guys from the Muppet Show. They would sit there and heckle all this time, but they had an incredible background in the history and the population of that town. And if you talk to people that lived in the area, the level of education in that small town and managing their budget was outstanding. They always were evaluated through their testing. They were always in the upper 90%. They did extremely well. They had more activities than we have in the town. One thing they didn't have is they didn't have 4 or 5 baseball, soccer field, and football fields. Okay, I will admit that. What they did is they rented them from I think it was Mount Ararat. My point is this: were those looked as options of maybe adding additional temporary buildings? Because the population in this town has grown significantly. When I left for the service in '73, the population was 2,200. My understanding now, just in Sabatis now, is somewhere around 6 grand. And by the way, the population in Sabatis hadn't changed since the Civil War up to that point. So we're seeing Sabatis, it'll happen to Litchfield, it's going to happen to Wales. We're going to be bedroom communities. And is locating or taking the smaller the school, we're going to talk about putting all this money in, and let's be really honest. By the time you do the driveways and the playground and you do the roof and you do the building, it's going to be several $1 million, at least. Then I asked you about the demolition of the other school. Because if it's not demolished, as my fellow service person said, it's going to cost money. And is it fair to say that right now Sabatis is paying a higher dollar amount than the other two towns? Is that fair? We're all paying 1/3?
No.
Litchfield pays more?
Per student.
Oh, no,
Litchfield-
I'm talking a dollar amount,
Taxes.
not per student.
You mean the mill rate? Are you talking about the mill rate?
So
No.
the dollar amount by town, which we do have available, because we are working on our budget this evening after this meeting. I think Sabatis does pay more, right, because of the population.
So I guess I need clarification of what you're asking. Are you asking how much we're paying per student?
No.
Not
Okay.
per town.
All right. So per town, what are you paying differential? Okay. So there's 2 buckets. There's a required local that towns have to pay in order to get the state funds. Litchfield pays a higher amount there. Then there's the 50-50 for the additional local. So you have the base amount to get the state funds. That's Litchfield. When you go to the 50-50, which is based on enrollment and evaluation, Sabatis does. So the additional, the Sabatis pays more, and the local required, Litchfield does. So it's all part of computation, which we are going to go over some of it this evening. But you can also reach out to me or Samantha with questions, and we will try to answer them for you.
Last thing,
More
and then I'll
specific.
take a seat. With the cuts that our federal government are doing, and let's be honest, we're all paying in this bucket. So when we say state, federal, local,
Correct.
I take it out of this pocket and I put it in that pocket, and then they empty that pocket. But the fact of the matter is, will that have an impact on your budget if federal dollars are reduced? Because they want to get rid of the Department of Education. I mean, who's going to be handling all this?
Right.
And right now, they're having trouble getting applications put in because there's nobody there to run it. So is that factored into your cost and your timetable?
No, it's not. I mean, we didn't know on January 8th that we were going to be in that situation today, right? We voted for the closure as a board on January 8th. And we are pursuing, a budget. We started end of January?
November.
No, on the budget itself.
We
Uh,
had our first presentation.
In November?
Mhm.
Yeah, so we've been working on it for quite a few months. So no, we didn't know to expect that or plan for that. We haven't pivoted yet. I mean, I don't think any school district might know what they're doing about that just yet. But this is really just for, our budget is based on what it would look like if Sabatis Primary stayed open and if it stayed closed. But we don't know what that impact would be from a Sabatis town side of the taxes.
And the only reason I mention that, as my fellow vet said, there's a lot of things going to happen, and there's a lot of open ends when you look at this. Because I've really tried to understand how the budget was going to be affected. And the numbers, to be honest with you, I thought were way too conservative in terms of operating costs. Because when you read operating costs, you got to look at the whole ledger. You can't look at the bottom line.
Right.
And if you're saying it needed a new roof, well, if my house needs a new roof, I don't wait till I need a new house before I put a new roof on it. So some of these things I'm a little confused about. But when we talk about making an investment in an area, I don't even know how much land they have there because it's going to take more land. And let's be honest, Libby Tosha's outside's pretty rough. The inside ain't bad, but the outside's very rough. And if we have all these terrorists with candidate about wood and the other materials that we're dealing with, aluminum and steel, how can you possibly come up with a budget that it's going to come up and we're going to say it's going to cost X, where none of us know? I don't think there's anybody in here that knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
No, we can't with our own personal household budgets either, right? But we still have to put something out in order because we have to get it out to the voters in June for our budget. So we have to come up with something.
I'll
right?
look at your website, and I'm hoping all the numbers are there in a nice spreadsheet so I can look at them line item by line item. But as I said earlier, our taxes went up anyway. And I anticipate it's going to go up considerably if we have to build another school, which I agree. We're probably going to end up having to do it at some point because the population of the town is going up so much more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Alan Plummer. I'm a Litchfield resident. I'd like to thank you on the board for putting your time in. I know it's not a fun job. But I would like to ask, you mentioned all the pros when you were up here. Can I find out some cons from you, the board members, of cons about closing this school?
Anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Robert Gayton Sabatis. I think one of the cons that we looked at when the consolidation committee first got together was the idea that Libby Tozier doesn't have a sewer system or a water system. They rely on a well and a septic. And Sabatis Primary has city water and city sewer. And the other thing was another con that compared to keeping Sabatis open to Litchfield is that we had already put a boiler in Libby Tozier, and Sabatis is looking at going to need a boiler in the next few years. Both air handler systems are already over 25, 30 years old. So consequently, there's enough cons to go around on both sides, and it was pretty even. You ask anybody that was on a consolidation committee, and they would say the same thing, that looking at both schools needed significant amount of work. But I think what it came down to was that Libby Tozier being on the same campus as Carrie Ricker, and Sabatis Primary being an outlier as far as transportation goes, the difference, that made a difference to the board and to the consolidation committee why Sabatis was going to close first.
Thank you, Robbie. Anybody else? Go ahead, Doug.
Doug Bumpus, Litchfield. I'm the chair of the Finance and Facilities Committee, and I was on the consolidation subcommittee as well. And we had open houses for people to come in and see, and I think that would have been very helpful to have seen that, to come in and see the state of the buildings. Personally, I think a con with closing Sabatis Primary is that we are going to be relying on Libby Tozier, and that school in and of itself is kind of rough as well, and that's why it needs all of the 1.7 million to be pumped into it. I kind of consider that a con. I mean, in an ideal world, and I know money-wise, but both of those schools are in really rough shape from years of kind of not quite getting the level of care they needed to be maintained well. So I think that it'll be challenging to be closing Sabatis Primary. But with that, having them both open has its own level of challenges with Sabatis Primary. So I don't know if that helps with the thought, but it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, you know. With that. I wanted to plug that I think that all of these subcommittee, those are online as well.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing. I kind of wish that it had been mentioned before this moment, but going forward, you can always go back online and look at all of the subcommittee meetings to see a lot of the questions that are being asked have been brought up and addressed during these subcommittee meetings as to the state of each of the buildings. We've gone over what each one needs and how we led to this decision right now, if that means anything. It's been documented.
Thank you, Doug. Go ahead, Christy.
Christy Billette, I'm also from Litchfield. I think one of the cons that I took into consideration is the proximity to the highway for Sabatis Primary, particularly for before and after care. So moving before and after care to Libby Tozier for families that have to travel on the highway to get to work is going to add an additional time to their commute. Also, for Sabatis residents, there's nostalgia in that building. You have families that have gone to that school from their grandparents went, their parents, now their children, and I think that's always hard. And then for Sabatis families, also their commute is going to be longer because they'll have to go to Litchfield for primary school. However, looking at the big picture, we now have schools in every town. So the primary schools are in Litchfield, middle school is at Sabatis, and the high school is here in Wales. So the pros for me definitely outweighed the cons.
Thank you, Christy. Anybody else want to give cons? Go ahead. Go ahead, Diane, sorry.
I've been a teacher in this district. Well, I had been. I've retired now. This is my 4th year. I spent 36 years in this district, and I was at Sabatis Elementary, and then it became Sabatis Primary, and then in the last 5 years of my teaching career in this district, I was over at Carey Ricker. My last, I would say 5 years at Sabatis Primary, I was sick all the time. They diagnosed me with asthma, allergies, everything. It was every year in October I was out, and then I moved to Carey Ricker, and I was not sick anymore. And so the doctors have, they said it's a sick school, and I do believe I would go in there in August and clean my classroom, and this is no lie, leave at night and come back the next day, and it was full of bugs when I came in the next morning on all of the desks, and I'd have to wipe them. So there is a problem with the ventilation in that building. I know that, and I know people want to keep their school small and in their communities, and I feel for that. But we also need to look at how can we best serve our kids in a healthier environment. I don't think we can keep them there in that kind of an environment. I mean, I went through it. I'm sure some of your children or our children in our district are going through some of the same things. I don't want to see that happen. I mean, if I had not moved to Carey Ricker, I never would have known. But having known that really opened my eyes to what's going on there.
Scott Fife, Wales. I I don't think this is a con per se related specifically to the school. However, I think it's a con that we have to close a physical usable space because of a perpetually ever-growing budget. This is sort of a patch or Band-Aid to fix a budget problem that will we will see continuously year after year after year unless we make some changes. So this is sort of, unfortunately, a necessary budget cut so we can pass the budget and continue on with what we're doing right now. But in the future, we're going to have to make some additional cuts somewhere. But closing a school to mend an issue is really what we're looking at.
Okay. Anybody else before we turn the floor back over? Just want to make sure we answered your question there. All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mike Bollier, Litchfield. What is the current pre-K to 4 population?
So if we went, I'd have to, will you go back, Norma Jean?
Excuse me?
I'm asking Norma Jean to go back to those slides.
We
so
have
you
that
Oh,
have
on.
okay.
them.
Yeah, we can pull
'Cause
that
it's a-
back up.
So that's the current population. What's it expected to be?
Right, so this is the expected. So if you go up and you have 80 and 93 for kindergarten and first grade. And then, yeah, we'll blow it off, so make it bigger.
I didn't go to Oak Hill, so someone's got to do that math for me.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. 173 there. And then, no. And then you have 64 pre-K, 82 second, 81 third, and 87 fourth.
And is
Sam
that
is adding it for us.
2024, 2025?
I think that's our
That's
expected
for that's our expected enrollment for next year.
25, 26.
And what's the projection going out?
So if you keep bumping it up, so
Do we keep pumping it up? Because
Yeah.
I don't see the
no, it's
population
declined.
changing.
It has declined. It used to be about 100 per class. So now, and we still have classes that are 100 or higher, that are at our middle school and our high school. But as you can see, we're averaging around 80, 85 per class now. And so, yes, that's why you're seeing, instead of 5 teachers, 4 teachers.
Okay.
And just like at the middle school, they had 5 teachers, 5 teachers, 5 teachers, 5 teachers. And now they're at 4, 5, 5, 5. And next year they'll be at 4, 4, 5, 5. So as that bubbles come through, adjustments will have to be made. If you saw the first grade is at 93, that's a higher class coming through. So every year we have to assess what are the needs for classrooms.
Do you have that total, Sam?
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any historical data or a place where they can go see the historical data? Because attendance is actually trending down and not up. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody mentioned the increased population, but historically it's been actually trending down as far as
Yes.
student attendance.
Yeah.
Evening. My name's Tom Wood from Litchfield. I had the opportunity to serve on the consolidation subcommittee with 24 other folks. And from my personal perspective, it was a quite open group. People were focused on the task and brought everything that they could to the process. And it was a really solid process. We're being offered a binary question on the ballot, which is yes or no. And it's really, there are at least 3 options. The first option is do nothing, and we haven't talked about how much that would cost. And that's a substantial cost all by itself. So the second choice would be not close the school, which is not quite doing nothing, but almost, or close the school, and they all have costs associated with it. An earlier speaker referred to the last attempt to authorize the building of a new building that didn't go very well, and some of the criticisms about the background information for that. The subcommittee and the standing committee both have upgraded their analysis, and it keeps evolving and refining. And none of us can see into the future. If I could do that, I would probably be rich and famous and living someplace with my feet up in a hammock. But I'm not. And so the most important thing to me personally is that over the past couple of years, RSU4 has done a better and better job of putting more and more important information on their website for people to view. And so it's become incredibly transparent and almost seamless. The website could be improved a little bit. That's always a possibility, but it's there. And for folks that are interested, you have to stay tuned, because every day, every week brings us new information, and the world's changing and changing fast. So the numbers that I've seen here match up with my experience on the committee, and I think are more than reasonable estimation of what we know today. And stay tuned for tomorrow and the next day. And the good news is it's going to show up on the RSU4 website for you to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mario Gal from Wales. I've heard all your pros and cons. My question is, if April 8th comes and it doesn't pass, and we end up standing here, are you guys ready to absorb that and know what to do forward? Because that's not been talked about here.
So yes, that's why we are preparing 2 budgets right now, that will go to ballot hopefully in June. One is what it would look like should Sabatis primary stay open, and one, what it will look like if it does get authorized to close.
That I understand, but what I'm saying is the remodeling that needs to be done. Have you gotten contractors involved and all that?
So the ones that Katie talked about, I don't know if we want to go back to that slide, with we started with the carpets. I think that was the first one on the list for Libby Tozier. Yes, I believe that's planned to begin, June? So yeah, we're already working on these things. We're not just sitting idle,
So
hoping
you have a contractor locked in and so on and so forth.
yes, for at least that items, yes. About all the other ones, I mean, I'd have to get Mark
Right.
up here.
No,
Okay, I just want to
But
know,
yes.
because I've been with this town many years, and we sit with our thumbs on our butt, and then all of a sudden, oh God, what are we going to do next?
Yeah, we're trying to be
proactive.
mindful of everything that's going on and what needs to happen regardless of the outcome. Right? We're trying to plan for that the best that we can with what we have available. I'll plug Mark. He did a great job getting some information and contract, and they're actually ready to go. I think the day the day after school closes, they are ready to hop in, get those rugs torn out of Libby Tozier, and put in some nice clean flooring. We're not going with carpeting, right?
Correct.
Right. So we're gonna have a nice floor to clean, easier to clean. I can't read it from here. I don't remember what's next on the list. Windowsills?
Yeah, windows.
Yeah, my eyesight's poor.
Bill-
I don't know if
I mean,
we've
a
gotten
lot-
to that
right.
yet, but I mean, just even with Sabatis primary, we're taking into consideration the current state of the building and the current state of the RSU, as well as, what our students need.
You said you were at Sabatis primary, you've got respiratory issues over those years. That's a curious little dilemma, because when my granddaughter went to school this year, they couldn't stay in the cafeteria or gym because there was a water leak that caused mold. I think it was in the art department also. Do you have any understanding if that leak had been there when you were there and that's why there was a mold problem? And one other thing, I went to a teachers meeting the other day, and they have carpet on the floor there too.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if they addressed the problem, because every day when my granddaughter comes home from school off the bus. She got booger running down her nose. We clean her up. Couple hours later, she's fine. So is there air testing being done there now?
It was, yes, it was.
And
Sabatis Elementary used to, when it was K through 8, was much bigger than it is now. That part of that building has been torn down, or had been torn down. There used to be carpets in all of the classrooms. I know when I was hired in '87 and I started there, I got the last classroom, and I believe it was built in, is it '85, that newer section?
Yep.
Was in '85. All of those rooms had carpeting in them, and then all of the carpets were removed in those classrooms. So there were no more carpets at Sabatis Primary School. But during those years that I was there, part of that was the carpeting, and that was an issue. There was mold in the classroom.
there's
under
still
those
carpets there.
But there's not anymore. The carpets are not there.
There's still carpets in my granddaughter's classroom.
The rugs or like installed carpeting? I think they're rugs.
It's
but
a
I
rug
hear-
that
I
covers a
hear
big
you.
area
Yeah.
in Mrs.
Oh.
Spencer's
Yeah, they have
class.
like area
Okay.
rugs.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have that air quality testing information? I know that we went over some of it last year, especially as part of the consolidation subcommittee. So we do. We do regular. I don't know how often air quality testing, but we also do have air purifiers in all buildings, right? In all of our buildings. But we know that this was a tough winter for illnesses and viruses. But
So if we keep the school, you're gonna take all the rugs out, you're gonna put an HVAC system in there?
so
It's
if we keep the school, we'll have to dig up
Yeah.
that plan, right, with what was requiring or needing or looking to be needed soon repairs. Because there were three or four different categories, like what needed to happen right away, what could wait a little bit, and what was more of a nice to have. We'd have to pick that up as a board and move forward with what needs to happen. How do we need to prepare these buildings for our students?
Because you have a real problem there. We went there for the student parent meeting, and they had the windows open that evening, and I had to get down to my t-shirt because it was like 95 degrees in that class. And my granddaughter every day says, "Grampy, I get down to my t-shirt because it's way too hot in the class." That's in the winter. In the summer, it's unbearable. And the same was true at Liberty Tozier.
Yeah,
when
we
we
talked
went there.
about that actually during the building tours that we did with our director of operations at the time, or director of maintenance facilities. I don't remember what the title was last year, so I apologize if I'm messing that up. But we did talk about that because there are some challenges with the current system in place. And yeah, we'd have to take that up. We'd have to figure that out.
What I'm trying to subtly say is, I don't think the maintenance is being done on these buildings in a timely manner.
It's not, you're
not.
right.
That's why
It's
we wanna
not.
close it.
Every
That's why-
year, the budget is cut, and that's what they cut, the maintenance.
No.
Well,
That's
we're
all
also
they
we're
cut.
also focusing on the closure of Sabatis Primary and the reasons for that, right? That's what the public hearing is about tonight. And maintenance is definitely a critical piece of that puzzle, and it has been kicked down the road, right, for many, many, many years, long before I even moved here. But that is not the deciding factor here, right? So I think what Tom was trying to explain and what Doug was mentioning, we talked about the maintenance repairs at both buildings, and who's going to talk about this building, right? That's next on the list at some point. All of the buildings require a certain amount of upkeep and care, and all of it will have to be considered regardless of the outcome.
You can only back up so much ice by the bridge before the bridge falls down. And what's
Yep.
happening is the maintenance hasn't been done for years and years, and now it's becoming a crisis because we have two schools that need significant repairs.
And we're trying
And
to
all
solve
I
for
hear
that
about
crisis
is
as
let's
best
put
as we can.
$200,000 worth of new lighting on the football field so they can use it 7 times a year. That's the only comment I'm making. We need to focus on what's a priority, not the aesthetics, the safety of the kids in school, and the education they're getting. Thank you.
Yep, we all agree. Thank you.
Rudy Gayton from Sabatis. How many children are you moving out of Sabatis Elementary to Cary Ricker?
So we're moving the second grade will be moving there. And
How many students are moving to
Yeah.
Litchfield?
it was 8, that whole school, what did I say to you?
I think she just
Yeah.
wants to know how many.
We've got it.
Residents.
87 and 93. So what I say? 93 is first grade. 82 is in first
So
grade.
what is the total of children you're taking out of Sabatis take to Litchfield?
Remember, the kindergarten is already, kindergarten next year is already at Libby Tozier. So they're going to obviously go to first grade there. And then the current school students at Sabatis Primary will be going up to Cary Ricker. And 175.
So does that
175.
mean that Litchfield has empty classrooms between the two schools?
Yes.
Yeah.
Put these
Current
kids
day,
in?
current day, yes.
Okay, I was just wondering how you're going to fit them all in.
I know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, and we
No, good
encourage you to
question.
look at our maps out back. And this slide, does this one have the class size? Sorry, I really can't see it.
Yeah, it has the number of teachers,
there
number
was
of
an-
students.
Or is our budget material, or excuse me, our consolidation, our status closing materials from December 18th, our meeting then. We talked about the class sizes, what they would look like, but I encourage you to go look at those maps, and you'll be able to see which classrooms, items or areas are designated as classrooms and where everybody will fit. But this does not increase our classroom sizes. And all of the children are going from Libby Tozier. I mean, my son went to Libby Tozier and then he went to Sabatis Primary. Now he's at Cary Ricker, right? So he did kindergarten, first and second, and then third, right? So they're all making that path anyway, and this is just cutting them out of that middle transition to the other school and this other school in Sabatis when they think about it, because they don't know, they're kindergarteners, they don't know what they're doing. And I'm from Sabatis, by the way. So
I think she
and it's really going to cut down on the transportation for when the children are on the bus. So my son gets on the bus at Cary Rick, or he was getting on the bus in Sabatis at Sabatis Primary, and they discharge at 2:20. 2:40, 2:35.
Yeah.
I forgot that quickly because now he's in Cary Ricker, and he doesn't get to his drop off in Sabatis until 4 o'clock. Right. So, this is going to help. Our thought process was that it's going to help the transportation. It's going to help us focus on the buildings because we know that. I mean, at some point, Oak Hill Middle School is going to require maintenance. I mean, and repairs. I mean, it already gets maintenance, but I mean that is just the task that we are charged with every year, and trying to figure out the juggling game. Which one do we fix? How do we fix it? Which one do we focus on? And how do we best serve our students? Go ahead, Christy.
So I'll give you another example of bus. So I have a 4th grader who lives in Litchfield. We live 8 miles from Cary Ricker School. He gets on the bus at 7:20. He proceeds to ride through Litchfield, goes all the way to Sabatis Primary to drop off their students at 8 o'clock, and gets dropped off at Cary Ricker at 8:25. We live 8 miles from the school. So by eliminating that SPS drop-off, it's going to make students' bus rides so much more efficient. We'll be able to have Litchfield buses, Wales buses, and Sabatis buses, and eliminate little kids. Like there's pre-K students on his bus that get on right after him and ride from 7:25, go all the way to Sabatis, and don't start school until 8:40. So that's something also to take into consideration. If you're not living it day to day, you might not know that our start times at our schools right now vary to be able to accommodate that all, and our little people are on the bus a really long time. In the afternoon, I'm able to pick him up, but I know that that's not an opportunity that everybody has. If I didn't, he would get home with a 3 o'clock dismissal at 4:20.
Thank you, Christy. Go ahead, Matt.
Hi, Matt Early from Wales. Few items I just wanted to touch on that have been brought up tonight. One was a population of the 3 towns increasing, which is true. However, the trending over the recent years shows the enrollment in our schools is declining, which has allowed for the available rooms in the Litchfield schools, making the need for a 5th school building not as needed. Also, I was on the subcommittee, consolidation subcommittee, and going through all the data and the numbers, we even did field trips to the schools, and we learned about deferred maintenance on a lot of the core, facility, HVAC, heating, plumbing, electrical, bathrooms, all this stuff. And a lot of this stuff, a lot of these larger ticket items the can has been kicked down the road for many, many years. And which leads me into my next point. It has been very difficult for the board to pass a budget these last 2 years. I believe 4 times both years, 4 attempts. We've been listening to what has been said, and taxpayers have asked for us to take bigger and more drastic measures, and this is what we have looked at as taking that step. If we don't close one of these 2 schools, the amount of repairs, maintenance and everything, it's going to be very hard to pass any budget going forward. The Libby Tozier School, Carrie Ricker School, high school, Oak Hill High School, and the middle school, I believe, all have upgraded to propane heat. Sabatis Primary has not, and that is in need of a boiler very soon. But these other big ticket items like roof, HVAC systems, this is what we have looked at and have come up with as a way to alleviate or offset having to pay for all of it, so we can focus on taking care of what needs to be taken care of with the space that is required to run our schools efficiently. Thank you.
I want to add, I think for the past, I've been on the school board for 2 years now. So I think some of the concerns that I keep hearing from the taxpayers is that, for one, this decision wasn't made for trying to push or something for a new school. I think that, for me personally, it's one of the last things that I want to try to suggest to the taxpayers that already have made it apparent that money is very tight. This decision was purely made after doing the walkthroughs and get the discussions and going and seeing all the ins and outs of these buildings. This isn't there's no future thought here. This is a here and now. These 2, the Libby Tozier and Sabatis Primary, have been neglected, and because of trying to tighten the belt for years and years and years, and maintenance and facilities was an easy, quote unquote, was one of the easier areas to try to tighten, because there's a lag to it. The buildings can make it the year that you tighten the belt, but then it lags, and that now we're at this point where you've tightened so much, it's cut off the blood flow to these buildings. So the decision was made to close one of these because they're so far gone. So again, there's no we're not trying to set up for a new school. These 2 schools are rough, and really we needed to decide as the consolidation committee between the 2 of them, which is the one that's worth putting an investment in, because we don't ever really get enough money to invest back into both of them. We only really have so much to invest into one. So that's where we're at right now. As far as the state of it, that's, again, I highly suggest going back online and looking at the subcommittee meeting minutes, and all of this stuff has been discussed in those, and those are where last year, 2024, right, the beginning of 2024, if I remember right, for a timeline, if that helps. I highly suggest going on there, because we were pretty thorough, and we had a lot of open table discussions about all of this, and we invited the public in for a lot of them. This is just where we're at right now with this. So
Thank you, Doug. Okay. Any other questions or any other comments from the board?
Thank you. It's been a great discussion, a lot of information going back and forth. I have a question about retrofitting the facilities that we're moving students into that weren't built for students of that age. I didn't see anything in your presentation about those costs and what those costs were going to be, because those are going to be a direct offset to any savings that you're planning on getting from closing the other building. And the other one was, to Doug's point about this isn't looking to the future, it's for the here and now. If you don't look to the future, you're dead in the water. So the new construction that got turned down, I have to take blame, I think probably with everybody else on the board. We're kind of, our hands are held on what we can really go out and do as far as campaigning for something, whereas those on the outside are unlimited on what they can put out and pass. The savings from closing the two schools would have just about made the annual payments for the new school. And 30 years later, would have had a 30-year-old school instead of two 90-year-old schools, 80-year-old schools, and we would have paid for it from the money that would have been saved from closing the two. So now your issue is going to be, you're going to close one, you're going to see that savings. When you have to build, you will not come anywhere close to offsetting the cost of the new building by closing one building. So, you know, it's like you're going to pay Peter sooner or later, and the later you pay him, the more it costs. It's just time value of money. If you can work it out and the time value of money works out for you, great. I doubt that it will. So do we have a number on the retrofitting?
So the only real big thing that we have to do is the pre-K bathrooms, and it's not high expense. It's getting the bathrooms retro for pre-K. The others are all set.
Okay.
And
I did
then
have
we
one other
have
question.
and then we have to obviously account for moving costs and so forth like that. Yes.
Right, which,
Yep.
I mean, we have to pay the staff quite a bit
Correct.
for moving,
Yep.
and the actual moving the equipment,
Correct.
because they don't pick it up and carry it.
Correct.
And the other thing I had was, you said the carpets, you're all set to go with that?
Yes.
Was that contract by RFP as required, I think, by state law? Or was that a single source contract?
We have an estimate.
Oh, you have an estimate, so you don't have anybody lined up to do it. You have an estimate that you hope is going to be, and when you get your RFPs filed, you hope that's where it's going to be?
Right. We're working, we have a contractor that said when it passes, we'll move forward on that. So we're working through those
All right,
logistics.
so that's not the RFP, that
Right.
would be sole source.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if you could do sole source for that amount of money.
Right.
But, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, looks like there's nobody else. We're going to be taking a short break before we transition into our budget workshop. But thank you, everybody, for coming. We hope you received the information you were looking for. And we would like to also remind you that we do have a lot of this information on our website. There is a Sabatis SPS closure vote icon with all of this material, everything that we talked about, the savings, the expenses, the questions and answers that were previously submitted on our website, because we do have that option. You can submit a question and we will post the answers. And that is it for the hearing. Yes, that is also, that was included in.
The
Yep.
slide that had the referendum. Yeah.
Yep. We'll put that up.
Norma Jean, can
the
you go to
referendum
that slide?
question.
Yep, she's going there. Why don't we?
Yeah, it's do you favor authorizing the school board of Regional School Unit 4 to close Sabattis Primary School? And then it notes the additional cost of keeping the school open has been estimated by the school board of Regional School Unit number 4 to be $358,076.69. You're welcome. So we can hang around for a few minutes, but we are going to take about we'll take a 10-minute break. So we will be back at 7:06 to begin our budget workshop. Thank you, everybody. We are 1 minute past our 10-minute break. We, round up.
Oh, I should have brought snacks too. I'm gonna be here late. Woo, no, it's fine, thank you.
Okay. Back online.
We are gonna have to use mics because we don't have the owl.
Yep, so make sure you're talking into your mic. I have an extra one here too. Okay, we are transitioning to our budget workshop. I just got to pull up the agenda.
It's for
The presentation.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, not everybody has their laptop though either, so
I'm trying to get in there.
Here,
let's get these out.
they should have them.
I have.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
I'm the only one who didn't have a paper copy then. Thank you.
We'll pass you.
I didn't know they had them.
Do we have an extra copy?
Sam's on it. Okay.
Yep.
So for our budget workshop this evening, we have our discussion points. So we'll be starting with our data requests from 3-5, from our 3-5 meeting. Then we'll move on to our article and cost center reviews. We are going to shift slightly this evening with this agenda, so bear with us. We're going to go from, are we going to hit 8 through 11, Katie?
Yes, so
Yes.
we're gonna do 8 to 11 in adult education.
And adult education.
But not school nutrition.
And not discussion point 03.
Correct.
We did already plan in April 2nd budget workshop, and we planned ahead. So we will come back on April 2nd to finish that. Sam, you have our data requests?
So last time we met, we noted several data requests from the board at the meeting on 3-5. So if you are on the digital presentation, those are hyperlinked. And if you have your paper copies in hand, that is the packet that starts with this cover sheet. Katie, if you can grab one from Matt. Yep. Yeah, look at that. So we'll get that around to you, Matt. So the first request was just to have in hand the most recent collective bargaining agreement negotiated increases. So it's a very succinct document, very straightforward, but it outlines the most recent increases year 1, 2, and 3, because all of our CBAs are on a 3-year schedule. It outlines like their contract terms, so you can see when those increases were negotiated, and it's the increase on the scale. So individual increases could vary. And then the next data request was for some detailed information about special ed case numbers. So Justin put together for you, it should be the next handout in the packet, the special ed caseload information. So it outlines the teaching and instructional support staff that we had talked about when we reviewed Cost Center 2 the last time that we met, but then it also includes the number of students that are within those programs at each school building. So you can see the numbers per staff there. At the bottom, he was also kind enough to include for us as well the number of students who receive speech services district-wide, our out-of-district placements, and then also his current special education student count district-wide, and the number of students currently in the referral process. After we reviewed Cost Center 4, other instruction, there was also a data request from the board to have the unique number of students participating in co-curriculars at both the middle school and the high school. So it had been noted that some of our students, there was overlap, so maybe a student does drama, but they also do table gaming. So the administrators in those respective buildings put together a unique student count, right? So out of the student population at their schools, the middle school, 102 students engage in co-curriculars, potentially multiple co-curriculars, and at the high school, 136 unique students engage in co-curriculars. My bet, if I were to ask them, is that many of those students do more than one club. We also had a request to have all of our RSU 4 stipends listed out. So I took our active stipend list for FY25 and I organized them by account description. So these should align with the cost centers that we've reviewed so far, with the same notation, like the school and whether it's school-based, athletics, etc. So you should be able to get some more helpful information from that list. There was also a request, I apologize for the printed version on this because the colors for the field hockey survey did not come out super distinct, but the percentages are accurate. So Brian Daniels, the middle school athletic director, queried the field hockey participants at the middle school and gave them an opportunity to answer the question how they were feeling about adding field hockey as a middle school sport in one of three ways. They could say, yes, I want field hockey to be a school sport. They could say, I just want to play field hockey. Or the third answer, which you won't see in the pie chart because there were no responses, no, I don't want field hockey, or no, I want field hockey to be run by the rec department, pardon me. So predominantly, over 80% of the student respondents indicated that they would like it to be a school sport. And again, the color version of that, if you are on the digital form, is much clearer. There was also a request about our wellness initiative that we have here in the district, which is spearheaded by our wellness coordinator. So Jess Kaloum, who is our wellness coordinator, put together one sheet that has some information, but just looking at the data points, the question really was about participation. So she outlined that we have about 47% participation in our online wellness platform through the MEA Benefits Trust. About 56% of our staff engage in the monthly wellness challenges that she puts together and puts out to staff. She communicates regularly with all staff about the items listed there. And then we have a district-wide wellness event, which is usually in the spring. This year it is April 9th, and all staff participate in that event. Yes, sir.
Does this help with our health insurance at all?
So that was the question that was asked last time, and there's not a direct data correlation, right? The intent of the Wellness Committee and the intent behind the MEA Benefits Trust supporting it to a degree is that if we are supporting and encouraging engagement in wellness activities, that our overall health of our staff will be better and our rates will be better if we have a healthier staff. That's the idea behind it, but making a direct correlation to that would be very difficult.
Okay, I didn't know if also if we got like what's the word for it? Some sort of
Incentive or something
money
like
taken
that.
off of the health
No,
insurance
it's not.
rate or something. If we
Like a
have
good example of that is the workers' comp. So we have things that we can put in place in our district that will allow us to receive a credit on our workers' comp premium.
yeah, that's
This
what
does not function in
doesn't.
that way. I think I can double check with Jessica, but yes, she does note it here. There's a $500 grant that we get for the participation in the program. So that money comes to us from the Benefits Trust, and then it's to be used for the wellness initiatives that she implements.
I mean, one good example, she does have one data point around, and this is a big push, use urgent care, not the emergency room.
Yeah.
So really encouraging people go to the urgent care, not emergent, because it's like, I think she told me $1,200 or so differential there. And so those are little, like the diabetes screening, so putting out there, go get your screening done to let you know whether you need to do some changes before it's too late. So a lot of things she takes is what she sees on our reports of where we're higher in, and then she pushes out things to remind folks about it. And then you see a lot of the wellness and mental health information so that our staff can stay healthy and be productive. So a lot of it, she takes the information, but like the urgent care, she could look next year and say, okay, did we have less use of the urgent care? So there's a little bit of data points that she can pick up on.
And she has offered to come to the board and present, give more information, or answer questions if you would like that.
Sorry, can we have to make sure, it's very hard to hear, even
about
just
now?
us,
No, am I
to
off?
hear you. You too, Sam, I'm gonna have to ask that you get a little bit closer sometimes. Thank you. But yeah, yours it might be off if you haven't talked all night. And some of them do shut off every now and then.
So the 2,000 for the 5K run, does that go for incentives for participants, or is that something that goes back to?
My guess would be yes. I can double check with Jess. It's been a few years since she did that fundraiser, but my guess would be it goes to support the initiatives of the program.
Okay.
She's always looking for freebies that she can give away, but when she does have funds available, usually it is to support like a staff incentive to participate in the wellness challenges, which our staff do get really excited about.
And there isn't they've spent the $2,000. That was an example of earning, but those funds have been spent.
Thank you, Sam.
So the next cost center, we're diving into transportation. So Sheena has a couple of slides to go over. We're going to do the same routine, which is the director will explain the slides they've prepared, and then Samantha will go over closing or not closing and give an overview of that cost center's increase or decrease. So Sheena?
Good evening. So I wanted to start out with our busing inventory, just to show you guys what our fleet currently looks like and what we're utilizing them for. So we have 16 total operable buses. 12 of them get used regularly because we do have 12 full-time drivers. We have 4 spares that we keep regularly maintained. Thank you. And 3 buses we have, those are down in the graveyard, as they call it, at Sabattis Public Works, that we've been stripping. We've been getting every part we can off of them when we need them. And that's been saving us some money this year. We also have 3 school vans, 2 of which are 11 passenger vans and 1 minivan. So on the bottom there, you'll see school bus purchase program. That is a hyperlink to the main school bus purchase program, where when a school bus is eligible, the state will reimburse part of the cost of the school bus. So on there is some different information about that. We have type C school buses. So the information that you're looking for is regarding type C. We currently, just to clarify, we don't have any eligible school buses, so they have to be 10 years old and have to have 125,000 miles on them. Does anybody have any questions on that?
They have to meet both requirements, the 10 years and the...
Correct.
Just curious, how many miles does a bus put on in a year, a school year?
Average of about 30 per bus. That obviously depends on if that driver's doing field trips, how long their run is, but that's average.
There's a lot of stops in 30,000 miles.
Yeah.
So the next slide there goes over our staffing. So we have 10 bus runs. Again, we have 12 full-time drivers. 10 of those do our regular run drivers every day, and then we have two full-time flex drivers that fill in when a bus driver is out, and they're available when we need for field trips, sports trips, or anything else that a regular run driver is not available for. So changes to the transportation budget this year, one being the fuel bid. So we did lock in 10 cents less than what our current contract was, or our previous contract was, which will start July 1st, and we're locked in for 2 years at that rate. We're also changing routing software, so we have switched over to Busrite, or we will be switching over to Busrite from Unite GPS. And with that change, you'll see in the line items a decrease under the cellular bill, and those funds moving over to contracted services. They just about canceled each other out there. A lot of benefits and more information to come on that routing software. But that was a change in the transportation budget. Our budget drivers this year are repair and maintenance. As our fleet is getting older, more repairs are needed, but we've done good so far to keep them maintained and whatnot, but we did have to up that, banking on repairs that will be needing to be made, and then as well as salary and benefits.
Sheena, can you talk about how you're utilizing one of your bus drivers to do some mechanic work to help do savings in that category?
Yeah. So we switched over to Don's Automotive at the beginning, so January 1st of 2024. And we utilized them for everything up until about a month ago. One of our bus drivers is a diesel mechanic, and we have been utilizing him as a mechanic rather than paying a shop rate for the garage, and that has saved us quite a bit of funds there. And we've been utilizing him just what he has the ability to do just at Sabatis Public Works. We don't have a garage for him, but he is doing anything and everything that he can when it's needed on the buses. Does anybody have any questions?
I think that's great thinking outside the box, utilizing who we have. I guess my only question would that be, is there any concerns about liability with our own employees working on?
No, as long as we provide the tools that he's using, then he's not like treated like an independent contractor. We pay him a rate of pay for that diesel mechanic rate.
Excellent.
And we've supported him, I think, to continue to get his.
Yep, yep. So anything he has needed up until now, in the long run, it saves us money if he needs tools and whatnot. I've also been exploring other avenues to get parts, and I mean just washer fluid, oil, windshield wipers. I've been searching and doing some digging with other directors in the state where they're getting their supplies from, and we've gone, for example, $30 a wiper down to $6 a wiper, and they're actually from the manufacturer. So
I have a question. This is a new routing software. Didn't we just get something not too long ago?
Yep, we did. And they're brand new. And at the time when we took them on, or they took us on, they were working out a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that they could improve on. I'm gonna be honest with you on that. And so with that, I did a lot of digging, research, asking other districts what they're using, getting actual reviews and feedback, and made the decision to go with Busrite.
Is there a cost savings with them?
It's not a cost savings, no.
Budget saving?
What's that?
I think she said budget neutral.
Neutral, because
So you'll notice, like Sheena mentioned, when we get to the line by line.
Okay.
Currently, we pay U.S. Cellular for the Wi-Fi accessibility on the bus tablets, and then we pay for whatever the thing is we have now.
Unite
We pay for
GPS.
that, thank you, Unite GPS and contracted services, but this new program, all of the accessibility, the data accessibility is wrapped in, so you'll see the cell phone money moved up to the contracted services because it's all together now, or it will be all together.
Sheena, talk about, because you're very excited about Bus Right. Well, give some highlights of why it's efficient and more, it's going to be more efficient, more responsive to what you deal with on a daily basis.
Yep. So a lot of phone calls are, where is the bus? Have I missed the bus? When is the bus going to be here? Is the bus running late? And so with the Bus Right app, it is linked to Power School, so they communicate with each other. So parents that are a part of a student's demographics in their profile will get a notification when the bus is running late, or when the bus is going to arrive, when their student boarded, when their student got off the bus. After their student exits the bus, they can no longer track the bus. A lot of our drivers bring their buses home. They would no longer be able to see that. But we can build in a window of time so they know when the bus is actually going to arrive. Also with that, if there was an emergency and we needed to pull a list of students who are on that bus, I would be able to pull that in a matter of seconds, because students will have the ability to scan on and off the bus. They can use that with a badge, sticker, their cell phone. There's multiple ways that they will have that ability to do that, depending on their age. So there's lots of perks to the program. They're one of the biggest routing companies, and after the state decided they were no longer going to fund a transportation or routing platform, most of the districts have been switching to Bus Right. With that too, if any equipment is broken, stolen, needs to be replaced, it's already included in the cost.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
So does that mean that there is capacity to just notify the parents of the certain color bus that the bus isn't coming?
Yes. So, like a notification on your phone that you get, like a seesaw notification, it will pop up, just like that.
I'm in.
Go ahead, Scott.
Could you further explain line item 39 with the energy electricity?
Do you want me to, or do you want to?
So just for clarification, we're on the budget report right now, and you said 39, right? So this particular account line will be the same in either version, SPS open or closed. But this, I think we talked a little bit about stipends and trying to untangle them and make sure things are paid where they ought to be. So what we discovered this year is that historically, the CMP bill that we get for the charging stations for the buses has been coded to Sabatis primary. So to set that right, we built into the budget the amount of electricity for charging those buses in a new electricity line that's in transportation.
Just for so $4,500 is the electric bill just for the power strip to keep the bus engines warm?
Correct.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, for the poles that are there. Yep.
How many are there?
We have 16 total. Only 8 stay at the garage at a regular basis.
Do bus drivers get reimbursed if they do it at their house?
Historically, they have not.
Okay, any other questions? Are we gonna move? Is it your turn now, Sam?
Sure. Yeah, just waiting patiently.
How do they know? Like, is that on a separate meter, or because it's at the municipal building, so it's metered separately?
Yes.
That's $375 a month. Okay.
Are buses plugged in when the weather is not?
Yeah.
No, well, yeah. So they keep them. It keeps the
So-
engine warm.
Yeah.
Because it's a diesel motor. So
But did you just ask Chrissy? Are they
My
are
question
they
was,
plugged
are
in
they
when
plugged
it's
in
not
in like
cold?
September when it's not?
Like when it's not cold.
Yeah, it depends on the weather. It is a block heater is why they get plugged in, so it keeps the diesel engine warm. And so in the warmer months, they're not being plugged in, no.
Are we being charged for electricity? Like, is there a fee associated with the meter?
Yeah, I
If
mean, you have to have the
use it or lose
electricity
it?
still on.
Right.
Like when your service is still there, you're still being charged something, even though you're not drawing off of that.
Yeah.
So there's gotta be, I mean, 375 is an average, just
Per-
divided
yeah,
by
divided
12,
by
but
12, but it could be,
obviously
like,
it's
divided by
higher
6.
and lower months.
Yeah, it's similar to our other electricity lines too. Like it does ebb and flow over the course of the year. So we pay different amounts during the seasons based on our electricity needs, based on our heating needs. So those things fluctuate based on the main
Season.
winters and the main summers.
The bottom,
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
bottom line is a year, so it doesn't matter
Right.
what we're paying per month. But it does seem high.
Yeah,
I-
it does seem high for
Would you
8.
like us to look into?
Yeah, I mean, we can check that out.
I mean, is there
We'll
something,
look at,
is there something else drawing off of
right.
that that you're not
We can
aware of
see,
that-
are we looped into Sabattis's bid on electricity? We'll look at that. We'll look more at that.
Yep.
Does that also includes the gas pumps though, right? The electricity for the gas pumps? No? Just
Nope.
the heaters?
Do we have separate gas pumps in the other municipal vehicles, or?
It's all just
It's all-
one.
Yeah. it's all
It
one.
gets, so when the driver fuels up, they scan their fob, and that fob is linked to the driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get a bill each month showing how many times that driver filled up and how many gallons.
So we pay our fuel bid amount per gallon and then a service fee to the towns for things like the electricity and maintenance on the gas line or gas.
Do we get DEF there too?
Yes.
It's an emission.
However, I will add that I did find a cheaper way to get that. So Sabattis was ordering it by the 2.5 gallon jugs,
Yeah.
and it's that's how it's been. So I took a look into that because it was quite a bit, and I got it down from just over $8 a gallon down to $3.17 a gallon by the drum.
You can buy it larger bulk too.
We can, just the place to put it.
Great questions. I'm glad Sheena's here to answer them because I don't know what DEF is. So, pivoting back to the slide on slide 8, this is the salary and health insurance comparison that we've been doing for every cost center. So you will not see a difference between Sabattis primary open and closed. You'll see a modest increase in the salary for our contracted individuals in this cost center, and same thing with their health insurance as well. So those stay static between the two versions. However, if you're on to slide 9, the cost center summary, you will see a difference between the version of the budget with Sabattis primary open and closed, and the majority of that difference is due to the fuel savings that we had kind of outlined and reviewed on December 18th when we had our SPS closure workshop meeting. So if we want to pivot to the line by line, I'm sorry.
I have a question. Are you there? Are you ready for them yet? Are you ready for questions yet?
Yeah,
Okay,
oh,
so
fire away.
line item 4, head bus driver.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a new position?
So that's a great example of one of a stipend that we want to pay for in the right place.
Okay.
So it was not budgeted there last year, but it is a transportation stipend. So it is, the account has been built and now it's coded where it belongs.
Because I thought we got eliminated head bus driver at one point.
No, it was a position previously. So the stipend was new this
Okay.
past year. The accounts are new. There's zero. I'm not sure historically if we've ever had a stipended head bus driver position in the past, but it's.
So we eliminated the head
I
bus
can
driver
answer that, yeah.
position, but
And
we
Sheena can
added
speak
a
to that more.
stipend for that person that's taking on the additional responsibilities. Right.
Okay, so when we moved from the coordinator to director, we had a head bus driver in there. Remember, so that she had support with the team
Yes.
and coverage when she isn't on the radio.
Yes.
So Sue does that, and you want to speak to,
Well, the reason why you're seeing a new stipend is because it previously hasn't been a stipend. It was always a $2 hourly increase. And so we switched that to a stipend last year.
Which means
All right.
it seems long ago.
I know.
that long
No, I'm
ago.
like, when did we do this? Like, it was last, yeah.
Yeah.
We were here.
And that's what budget season does to us.
Do you have more?
So we'll
Did you have
start
more?
That was it.
first.
Scott
Oh,
has
could you
Yep.
clarify line item 30 and also 41? Because is that, I want to get some clarification because I'm showing like some of the same stuff on there.
30 and 41.
30 shows your
Yeah.
Easy Pass, Bus Right, Armor, and then also 41 we have Armor. So
I
is
can
there,
explain
what's,
that if you want.
is there
Yep.
something duplicated
So
there?
I'll try, and then Sheena can correct me
I
if
know
I'm
we
wrong.
mentioned the new
Sure.
software, so is there
Yep.
hardware that goes along with
Yes.
that?
So the tablets come with it. So there's two parts to that, right? Part of it is the subscription for the online platform and all of the kind of bells and whistles that Sheena mentioned. And then the equipment is separate and is coded to the equipment line.
So Armor is our cameras on the buses. So contracted services, the licensing for that software is coded under that line, and then the equipment. So when Cressy installed it, we paid for half of it last year, and the other half is this year, which is why I put that under equipment this year.
So 41 we can expect to see reduced next year because we have the equipment.
Correct.
It's not leased or anything.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Do you want me to jump back forth to like the
Sorry.
salary? No, you're
sorry.
fine. These are great questions. Great questions. But we will start with the SPS Open version. So if you're on the digital, it's labeled that way. In paper hand, it's labeled SPS Open at the top. So similar to the other cost centers, just note that this is a district-wide cost center, so you won't see it split among different schools like we have some of the others. So starting with line 1 and going to line 28, those are all of your salary and benefits lines for the staff within this department. We've already talked about some of the other discretionary lines and the changes, but I will just note that line 30 is the contracted services line, and line 35 is the telephone, which is where we have previously billed the data packages for the bus tablets. So you'll see a significant reduction there and an increase in line 30 to accommodate for that, and also just some additional rate increases for some of our services that we pay for in that line. Sheena did also increase the repair and maintenance line significantly. She's been doing really good to listen to my patient, or probably not patient, that's probably like a Freudian slip. My request to be mindful of that line as we move into, close to the last fiscal quarter of the year, because we will be close to overspending that line. So she's budgeting as the fleet ages a little bit for some more repair. And then, Scott, you noted line 39, which I was going to point out. And we did also reduce line 48, if you'll follow me there. We reduced our extracurricular transportation costs. We've been working hard to make sure that we have a up and running fleet and that we have drivers that are able to take on additional trips. And so our hope is that we can decrease the amount that we're paying our coaches or advisors to run student athletes and participants to other things next year. And then lines 53 and 54 I'll just touch on, because even though they live in Sheena's cost center, they don't really belong to her. She doesn't oversee special ed transportation, nor does she oversee homeless transportation. She gives feedback and answers questions when I ask them, but we have other folks who really are the experts in those areas. We've kept those lines both static this year with the hope that we can leverage the local entitlement grant, and also we do receive a small McKinney-Vento homeless grant, and we do pay for some transportation with that. So the hope is that what we have this year currently will be sufficient for next year for those transportation costs combined with the grant funds.
Can I ask about 37? What is the annual conference?
So we're asking about 37. Travel for annual conference.
I actually just attended it last week, but I got a grant for it. So that is in anticipation if I didn't receive a grant. It was 3 days, and it was so informative. It was really, really great. They do hold it annually, and I was lucky enough to have everything paid for, meals, lodging, and everything that went with it. But that was in anticipation if I didn't get a grant for that.
Is it in-state or was it out of state?
In-state.
In-state.
Sam?
Mhm.
On line 43, bus lease principal.
Mhm.
Are we not getting in line for another bus this year?
Correct. As Sheena noted when she went over the initial slide with the fleet, the hyperlink to that program, we don't qualify right now
Right.
for any of those, so we are not going to go out
Okay.
and buy a bus without that program. So we'll wait until
All
we
right.
have an
Yep.
eligible bus in the fleet and then apply, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Can you fill out, what is line 29?
What is line 29? Just want to make sure you guys are talking into the mics, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Line 29.
Yep. So purchase professional services. This is where we currently code the inspection of the fire extinguishers. Jump in if I get it wrong.
right.
On the buses that need to be inspected every year, just like the ones that we have in the school. And also, we by contract pay for fingerprinting renewals for our bus drivers and our other support staff.
I don't remember them ever paying for teachers fingerprinting.
I don't think it's in the teacher's contract.
Wow.
Used to pay my own.
Go ahead, Christy.
Where would we find, what line is gas or mileage?
Yep. That is bus fuel, energy bus fuel. It's line 40.
And so I'm trying to look at both at the same time. We don't anticipate less mileage if we close a school.
I think we anticipate less mileage in the regular runs, but we anticipate more trips. Am I getting
The
that
ability
correct?
to have more
Yeah.
trips. Yep. Right now, the regular drivers don't transport any sports unless they're on a Wednesday afternoon.
Oh, and keep in mind, you're looking at the
You're looking
SPS
at the
open version too.
Sabatis Open.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so you'll see a difference on that that line 40 in the other in the
about
SPS
5,000.
closed. You'll see a reduction.
I think people have to remember too, this will be a first year trial, right? So we don't want to go too low and then go, we hope that next year's budget will be a good, okay, we did this. We could have more savings because we're more efficient, with bus right coming in, with the consolidation, because they will do our routes again for us. So, what we don't know, we don't want to over anticipate and then be telling you we're over budget.
Diesel's coming way down.
I was just going to ask, so you said our contract is 10 cents lower than our previous contract.
Yes.
So if the price of fuel comes down, do we
Mhm.
pay the higher price?
We pay the contracted
Or
price.
the contracted price?
Yep. We went 2 years. So we worked with a company that really keeps track of what's going on in the world and what, the anticipated costs are for fuel. And the recommendation was a 2-year contract.
We have an out, though, if we want to. We can term,
I don't
walk
think.
away.
Yeah, we're locked. It's until we use the gallons that
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
contracted to use.
Yep. And we get a better rate because we also utilize Sabatis and Litchfield. So their fire trucks, anything that uses diesel. So any public works dump trucks or plow trucks, we work together and put all of our fuel together and let the company know what we anticipate we're going to use for fuel, and which does lead to a lower rate because we're going to be purchasing more.
Purchasing more, yeah, bulk. Okay, thank you.
Question, do we ever pay for someone to get their license to drive for a bus driver?
We have in the
And-
past. yeah.
And is that something we budget for, or?
I wouldn't say that we've budgeted for it in the past. I've said that when it comes up, we've taken care of it. I mean, especially the last couple of years where the bus driver shortage has been top of mind, and we've been trying to be really creative and do everything that we can. Often that's a year where if the buses aren't running as much because we don't have drivers, then there's funds available to support a driver to get their license and go through the classes.
We haven't supported substitutes, just to clarify. So if we were short a driver, that's where those funds would be available because we were down a driver. But if, I mean, we can have as many substitutes as we want, you know, but we wouldn't fund their license and the coursework and all that.
Sam, I know, are we looking at down the road what we're gonna do about the fuel station? Are we gonna have to do maintenance on it? And I know we're paying a 10% surcharge to the towns for that. Are they keeping a record of how much money we're putting into that and how much is in that fund now?
I would imagine they are. I mean, that's, to me, that's the purpose of that surcharge, is so that way they have funds available to maintain the pumps that we're accessing. But I don't oversee that, so I wouldn't be able to answer that directly. I would say it would be good
I
practice.
can answer it. I don't think they are.
We've have work done on the pumps just since I've been overseeing the department, and we have not received a bill for it.
Yeah. Okay. But I know there's gonna be maintenance for the tanks in the ground and like that. And I know there was discussion in the past in Sabattis. And I know there's current discussions going on in Litchfield about their fuel depot. So I'm just wondering if,
We can ask if they account for how much
yeah.
I mean, we would know because we know how many gallons we
Right.
pump from that.
Well,
So we
asked that
definitely can
We've
track
asked
it.
that question in the past, and what we got
Yes.
was like, sometime.
But we know like the surcharge.
Right, yeah.
So, yes.
I keep a record of every bill and could do some real quick math to tell you how much we've paid in that surcharge.
And the company that we worked with to go out to bid they have great connections with the fuel companies as well, and they were able to get us all of the records of the deliveries to the towns as well, so we could cross-reference our bills with those deliveries and
Okay.
whatnot, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Cost Center 8? All right, great questions, team.
Thank you, Sheena.
Thank you, Sheena.
And Samantha. And so, Mark Taylor, you're next. So this is Cost Center 9, Facilities and Maintenance.
Good evening. So facilities and maintenance, Cost Center 9. Talk a little bit about staffing, of course. Director of Operations. Head custodians are in place. We got our daytime and our nighttime custodians. At the moment, it's 5 schools and our central office. I'm going to the next slide. This is our staffing with Sabattis open and Sabattis closed. Anything that is in bold is a change. Pretty much it's a 1.75 decrease in staffing for this, but we also, if you notice on the slide, that we gain and we have increased custodials. It's a balance. The big change is Carrie Ricker with the 2 nighttime custodians. Of course, and that changes our half custodian head to 1 full-time head custodian at Oak Hill Middle School, and that would be the other change. Any questions on the staffing? So again, some facilities maintenance, things that I deal with really on a daily basis. Snow removal, travel reimbursement, repair and maintenance, custodial supplies, energy, fuel, propane, and electricity. We have our energy performance contracts and project payments, utilities. We got water and sewer charges, telephone, insurances, building and content insurance, facility inspections. We do have in this budget a school resource officer. And I've also linked the facilities maintenance of equipment of the district for you guys on this as well. I think
I'll just note, and for those of you that have the printed, it's the first, I gave you a packet that had additional handouts that were linked in the PowerPoint. So it looks, I'll just hold it up. It looks like this. It is a distinct document if you click on it on the digital version as well. It just made for a very small, hard to read slide. So.
Any questions on any of the contents of the facilities?
I mean, I'm pleased to see if SPS does close, that eliminates the one custodian in the building at night. That's something as a board we have talked about, and it has been just a concern of liability. Like if something was to happen with that person, no one would know. So that is actually a pro that I didn't even think about, and I'm glad to see that.
I feel very strongly about that, and same thing just with the snow removal. I expect 2 people to be doing snow removal together. It is a cost, but just for that reason. So thank you.
Yeah, and before we step away from that slide, just remember we had noted kind of at the beginning of this process when we talked about budget drivers that the SRO would be a significant budget driver. So remember that when you see that in the line items, you'll see a pretty drastic increase from what we currently have in the budget. And I think Mark intends to review the worksheet for the equipment and other capital assets with the finance and facilities team when they meet. So we had that little shuffle in our schedule. So instead of reviewing it before, well, we're going to review it after it came to the full board. So.
Yeah,
ahead.
Mark.
Yeah.
Is there any, I mean, not for this budget, but for just informational sake, are we asking the staff how our custodial staff is keeping up with the building? Are they finding it clean? Is it, good enough for them? So we know where we can, if we have to, move people around?
Well, by all means, we just our monthly head custodian meetings are very helpful.
Right.
You got Brenda, you got Chris, and you got Deb, who are very informative every step of the way. So we talk consistently about their needs of their buildings, and with me and Brenda, we have talked about different scenarios of shifting, and we will do so as needed for the district.
Yeah, I was just wondering staff feedback, if the staff thinks the buildings are being cleaned, the way they should be.
Well, for the most part, I hear wonderful things.
Right.
And in fact, we just had a MSMA visit, and I got told by the inspector that the buildings have come leaps and bounds since his last visit with the district. So
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
And just to be clear, when he puts the budget together, he meets with the principals and they tour the building to get
Yep.
feedback, and then also working with the head custodians on needs and so forth. So, we did, with the closing, Brenda was definitely consulted around what did she feel
Yeah.
would, they obviously would say they need more. I mean, everybody,
Yeah.
if they were sitting and they say, we advocated for more. And what we were saying is we need to see how this works.
Yep.
Because you're still cleaning the same square footage. So again, it's going to be a learning year. This is what we feel can support. Let's watch it. Let's get your feedback about it. But yes, if they were sitting here, they would have said, we feel we need more.
Doug.
I know this year there's been some bathroom vandalism, right? And then the previous year we've had some bathroom vandalism at the middle school and stuff. You must keep an itemized kind of amount for that?
Well, I absolutely do. So anytime anything happens to a building, of course, you've got to get a contractor involved. I need an estimate. Sometimes, Doug, we luck out and we can deal with something in-house.
Yeah.
Okay. So if a bathroom stall is bruised up a little bit, etc., we can paint that and save some big money.
Yeah.
There's certain we've lucked out that this hasn't been an extravagant cost yet.
Okay.
And we've been lucky.
Yeah.
Really, it's not pennies on the dollar, but it's nothing alarming or, it could be 50 times worse.
Yeah.
But again, it's just one of those things. I get it. It's a concern of mine, and I'm, of course, addressing it daily when it does happen.
Yeah, I just want to call some attention to it, mostly for the fact that it might impact your particular budget,
Right.
trying to deal
Well,
with these incidentals, that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's a concern of mine, and it's in my budget.
It is.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
did you find that it changed your budget significantly?
No,
from last year to
I mean,
this year?
for me, we're very conservative, and again, what I try to do, with a bathroom issue, first thing I think of is, can my custodial staff make the problem better?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're into it, some paint, a couple little items, and I luck out and got a custodian capable and goes ahead with the project. That's usually my mindset,
That's
as long
what's up.
as we don't need a master plumber or et cetera, because it's huge savings for us.
So it speaks leaps and bounds about the custodial staff as well, that they're dealing with
100%.
a lot of these major issues and saving money
Darn right.
for the
Yep,
staff that's,
yep.
yeah. Fair.
Yes, sir.
Looking at your field maintenance equipment column on the capital equipment list, it just made me think, have we looked at mowing our own lawns in-house versus contracting? And also, maybe not contracting them out, but instead of having all of this mowing equipment at all the different locations, we have a pickup truck and a trailer. Would it make sense to reduce some of the maintenance costs on having all of this equipment to having a set unit that rolls around to all the school buildings?
Well, when I first started in September, I had this idea, and it was just an idea, but it was for a pretty much a maintenance ban for the district. And I don't know if that would come from a custodial position or what. It's just a thought process. But I had thought of that if we had one person dedicated to the district maintenance in that end, it would be a huge success. In previous district, we had, big mowing companies come in and take care of everything. We're definitely, I still think we're cost efficient compared to having Gray Brothers come in or mow or something. But I have thought of that, and, there was one person that come to my mind would be perfect for our district, but it was just a thought process trying to save some money and put some thoughts on paper.
And Mark, we do mow in-house, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We take care of all our mowing. Yep. Thank you. Yep, central office is not mowed by us.
I'm just trying to click through your heads.
Turn this.
Oh, are you on it? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you had it still. Sorry.
Thank
do
you.
need some help?
There you go. Turn that way, Scott. So it goes right there.
So, thank you.
Here we go.
When we open a document, we don't close the document.
No, I know. It just looked like she was staring at through me.
Everything's a process.
Like you were expecting me to say something.
All right, so this is some budgeted maintenance and repairs for the budget. Libby Tozier. These are some projects that I would like to get done, of course, and I'm going to. Playground fencing out back. It needs some big improvements around the back area. It's dangerous. I don't like it. We're going to make it better. Masonry repairs. That building is starting to crack, fall apart. Bricks are missing. Again, maintenance. I have a good masonry contractor that is lined up. We've just been waiting for weather, actually. It's going to be a go. Once this guy gets caught up, we're going to get on these repairs. Sabatis Primary, only if it remains open. We are desperate for window repairs, more pavement patching, and the playground is probably the worst I've ever seen. It worries me daily. So if that stays open, that's something we have to address. Carrie Ricker, replacement fence, it says. That is the white vinyl fence. There's some broken parts that are dangerous. We're going to be, if we put the pre-Ks there, we need a safe environment. So that's what that's all about. We also have a swing set issue there. One of the new swing sets has come loose from the ground. I've had Burke's Playground come and look at it. That is going to be an item that's going to be fixed. For some reason, whether it's ground, water, or et cetera, it just sways, and it worries me. So that's going to be taken care of as well. Bathroom stalls is on here. We're going to do some improvements to them. A lot of it's going to be in-house custodial, just to improve the visibility of it and et cetera. Next, you'll see pre-K fixture replacements. Not a huge cost, But again, these little guys and gals, they need little toilets and little sinks. So that really is not a bad factor. Nothing too alarming there. Going down to Oak Hill Middle School, their gym bleachers, they need help. They need to be repaired. From getting pinched when you sit on them to et cetera, there's some holes and they're dangerous. And the eyesore, I go into that school, I love that school. And I just want to see better in there for the kids. Playground border repair. So as we all know that we got the nice grant and I was able to put wood chips throughout the district, which is awesome. Came up a little shy on cost for the border repair. You can put all these chips in the ground, but if the border's not holding them, they're just washing out. It's a waste of money. And we're ongoing trying to fix safety issues with the border. So it just is time to pull the trigger on it and make this a safe playground. The big thing for the middle school as well this year is front entrance grounds and maintenance. Doing a walkthrough with Michaela, there's just needs some sprucing up. It's not a huge dollar amount. Again, can it be in-house? Yeah, a lot of it can be. Nice mulch beds around the trees, just crisping the area up and having a better area when we come into the school was our thoughts behind that. Going on to the high school, again, masonry repairs. Anybody gets any time to walk around that building. If anybody didn't know, I come from a long line of masons, and that's what we've done our whole lives. I build buildings with my dad, and the place, we got to get on top of it. This building needs some desperate help, so every year I'm going to allot a little bit, and we're going to keep plugging away till we get around the building. We talk about painting the building. You got to fix the masonry before you paint over the old masonry. It's bad out front there if anybody would like to take a look sometime. We also need to keep working on our ceiling insulation in the high school. There are areas, due to the freeze up before, of course, that has been fixed, but through the building there are ceiling areas that do not have adequate insulation. So again, every year you're going to see me putting a little money aside for that to do an area. We did one last year, we're going to do one this year. The cost of not doing that on the coldest winter is going to be huge. Again, of course, as we know what we've lost in the past. We also have a sprinkler issue at the high school, and we need to get our glycol system repaired in one of the wings. It is holding glycol, but it is leaking. And of course, that's a big component to our sprinkler system. So that is something that has been avoided, and it needs to be repaired as well. And then of course, the last thing, if we can get all of that done, we will be doing some painting. We will start at the front entrance of the high school. Masonry repairs done, and then we can spruce that up with some paint, which would be custodial. And I think it's going to make a humongous difference out front of the school. And, the principal, the staff, the kids can be really proud of this when they pull into these buildings. And last but not least, if anybody has noticed at central office, our paving. My poor little Volkswagen, I always on the weekends, I do little loops around the buildings, just get bored, want to see what's going on. And me and my wife pulled in and I did a loop with my Volkswagen. Holy sparks. I bottomed right out, and I was like, yep, it's time. So we got an estimate in process. One will be to repair and one will be for, the whole project, and then we can weigh out what we need to do with that as well.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if SPS closes,
Microphone. Microphone. Thank you.
so if Sabatis Primary closes and we have all the moves that we're going to have, and we're going to have pre-K over at Carrie Ricker, what kind of equipment are we going to have for the little kids? Because really that equipment is not for pre-K.
Jan went over and checked it out, and
It's
we're
okay?
good.
Brand new.
Yep, she went, and there's definitely equipment they can use.
Okay.
I feel like the equipment at Carrie Ricker is better than Libby Tozier
Oh.
for that age
Oh,
group.
100%.
It's the best playground.
So then what are we
For
going to
that
do for
age
Libby
group, though.
Tozier then?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's going to stay for
Maybe
first.
we can have some
those are good for
parents.
first and second. Kindergarten first. I mean. Okay.
K1.
K1, yes. But it's, even just visiting the playground on the weekends or whatever. My daughter had a difficulty with Libby Tozier, and not so much as difficult with Carrie Ricker, so.
Because I know the slide was really high up off the ground
Okay.
at Carrie Ricker.
Have you been over since the new playground's there?
The
Well,
new
slide-
playground?
That slide was fairly new when they put it in, so the kids would come off and it was like quite a drop. I don't know if they've put more mulch.
Well, of course, the fall areas, anything like that, that's where we put a bulk
Okay.
of our mulch. It's a quick, easy way to make the kids safe. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't wear out and you've got to rake it back in or do a little maintenance on it, but it can definitely be avoided and make the height right.
And have they repaired that, what is it called, it goes across, back and forth? One of the things was off the track.
The zip line?
Is that gone? Okay.
Go ahead, Scott.
Going back to the central office paving
Mhm.
that you mentioned, do you think there would be an opportunity to expand that parking area with that same project as maybe a potential future parking space for buses?
I think that's a great idea. And in fact, if we got into this project and, it was a go and we're going to repave, at that point, that would be the time to pull the trigger on that because the cost would be minimum, right? Meaning they're in there, they're grading, they're doing everything anyway. So that would be I think something great to explore, and it could be a great place for the buses.
Could you look into like the land space access for how big we can make that? And
We have a lot of
So,
We have a lot,
I-
I mean, it is part of finance and facilities next meeting around transportation, and central office is obviously discussion, whether we lease, so more to come on that, but
Sure.
I'm glad you're seem
Thinking
supportive about it, Scott. It's great.
Thinking ahead, yeah.
I don't think it's the right way to go, but I'm just thinking that.
I think we have you on tape now, but yes.
I think there is about
I
18
guess-
acres there.
I guess, are we talking about a fuel depot there and maybe a garage?
This is honestly the first this has ever come up.
I mean, I just don't know what sense it would make to park the buses there and then go someplace else to fuel them and work on them.
And I don't know the transportation end, but are we also secure at
Table.
Sabatis? Is that a lifelong home for us, or?
Right, absolutely, yeah. I get it. No, I'm just trying to.
Thank you,
look
Robbie.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a perfect world, right, we would love a great, pretty school and a bus depot. Because, I mean, I drive by, like, Poland. I'm like, oh, look, they got this nice, great place. Yeah, well, go ahead, Doug.
It was casually mentioned during the consolidation subcommittee
Right.
meetings, the central office thing, so
Right.
it has come up.
I have a question about lighting.
Yes.
I don't know about the high school very much. I guess I'll find out tonight. I don't remember coming here, but I know the parking lot, Libby Tozier, is super dark.
Yes.
Super dark. Scary. Super dark. And I think the middle school is a little dark too for the
Okay.
age group that goes there. Like we practice a lot of third and fourth basketball. So I just didn't know where that fell in, and if you could, evaluate, how we can improve. And Libby Tozier's the scariest one for me.
You're saying, not to interrupt, by the back, like if you're going in the
Yes,
kitchen,
the
et cetera,
back,
that
thank you,
area,
sorry,
okay.
yes. The back, because when they use that building for extracurriculars, the kids are so little, and I get nervous, like I can't see them if I'm trying to leave my parking spot. So cheer practice, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I get
yeah, that's something
anxiety.
I can absolutely, I'll make it a priority, we'll get on it, and we'll see what we can do, okay?
Didn't know where it
Yeah.
might fall in, just to make sure that.
Well, I can at
our
least get an
well lit-
electrician in there, get a cost evaluation and start from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You might also want to check in the windows at Carrie Ricker, because when I was there, I was in that last classroom on that left wing, way at the end on the left. Somebody had broken in there years past, and so the side of the window is there's nothing there, and so the air comes in the wintertime. It's quite cold, but the windows are so heavy that to lift them is really hard, and then you have to take those pins out and put them in to keep the windows up. So to look into something that would make it easy for teachers to be able to open their windows more easily.
I think That might be a bigger conversation though, because if your HVA system is
Yeah.
operating correctly, then opening and closing the windows isn't how you're supposed to regulate air quality or temperature. So I would hope our director of operations would be telling people, let him know about like the temperature and air
Well,
quality.
it's-
so
well,
that
it's
way
in
we can work
June.
on the system.
We don't have a air control system
Yeah, no, I
in
understand.
those
Yeah.
buildings, because we don't have air conditioning in the summertime or spring or fall. So opening windows can be pretty important to get air in.
Yeah.
In
Just
those,
saying it's a bigger conversation,
Right.
I think. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, put that on your radar to
course,
look into
of
that.
course.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Great, thank you. All right, so cost savings with SBS closure, again, as we talked about, the 1.75 custodians. Building maintenance and operation savings, electricity, liquid fuel, and basic maintenance and repairs. Give you an idea, electricity in that building's about $25,000. Heating oil is around that as well. You could go on and on with these costs, but they're definitely extravagant. And the old boiler, it's just not efficient there. Any questions? Nope. And I'll pass it over to Sam.
So slide 16 in your presentation, this is the cost center comparison with health and salary for staff. So you will note a difference here for both of those items, noting the 1.75 custodial reduction that Mark has mentioned. So you'll see with SPS open, we actually tick up a little bit, around 23,000 in salary increase, but with the closure, those position reductions lead to a savings of close to 60,000, and the health insurance slides down commensurate with that. And then the next slide, so this is the cost center in total. With SPS open, you're looking at an increase in cost center 9 of over 150,000. With SPS closed, you're looking at a decrease of 111,000 to this cost center. All right, so that is a bulk of the savings for the closure is within cost center 9. So if we want to pivot to our budget documents, we'll start like we have with SPS open. So just noting, this is really similar to cost center 5. There is a section for each school, and then there's a district-wide section and a couple other subsections as well. So starting on page 1, remember Carrie Ricker ends with the last 3 digits 020. So from lines 1 through 12, those are your salary and benefit lines for the custodial staff at Carrie Ricker. Going down through the next lines, you'll see that line 15, Mark has increased that repair and maintenance line pretty substantially for some of the projects that he mentioned. Every building, every physical plant, you'll see the building and contents insurance line. We've been notified that our increase in that insurance premium will probably be around 15%. So we're still working off that really big claim that we had a couple of years ago at the high school. So you'll see that everywhere there. I think that was all I wanted to point out with Carrie Ricker, unless you have questions. Okay, so on the second page, go ahead, Doug.
Just purchased 14, purchased property services. What was that again?
Yep, so purchase property services covers a couple of things. It covers the fees, or am I not on? Oh, I have to hold it like right next to me. Purchase property services, primarily that covers our payments for the energy projects that we've done with Siemens. So the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 payments. But it also covers things like our trash removal, right? Covers things like our building inspection fees. Anything else you want to know there, Mark?
Well, you figure just from building inspections to boiler inspections to fire safety to it's all in there, and there's a lot.
Yeah, pest services, things like that. Yeah, but the bulk of that are the payments for the projects that we've engaged in and our service agreement. All right. So starting with line 25, that begins your middle school lines, which end in 030. So 25 through 38 are your staff and benefits for your custodial workers at the middle school. And then you'll note that purchase property services, Mark and I looked together at length at these lines, and we looked at the payments that we make for those projects that have been done and also other fees within those lines. So we worked hard to either say, do we need to bring those in line with actuals by raising, keeping them the same, or lowering? So you'll see some fluctuation within those lines throughout the different plants. 43, again, the anticipated increase to our building and contents insurance there. I think what we haven't noted, we did last year get lucky enough to get into a new electricity bid when we went out that was lower. So you'll see that staying consistent with what's in there for this year. And then for the middle school, Mark has budgeted for a new floor machine in line 51. So there's a significant increase in that equipment line for next year. And then starting with line 52, this is where we get into Libby Tozier, ending in 120. So 52 through 64 are your salary and benefits for your custodial staff at Libby Tozier. And then you'll note Mark has added some funds to line 67 for repair and maintenance for some of the projects that he noted earlier tonight. A similar increase for the property and building and contents insurance for Libby Tozier. Reviewing all of his lines, Mark actually reduced the supplies in line 71 to be in line with actuals for Libby Tozier. And then just noting line 74, the liquid propane. If you remember the phase 3 where we converted over to liquid propane for our liquid fuels at most of our schools was recent, right? So the budgeted amounts that we have seen in prior years, we worked hard to review those and to bring those in line with actuals. So there's a significant reduction to that liquid propane line for Libby Tozier. And line 77, this is where Sabattis Primary starts. So in the closed version, you'll see this subsection of accounts zeroed out with 2 exceptions. So you'll see that we've left in enough for 2 months worth of utilities, water and sewer, and 2 months worth of electricity in the event that we are not able to have a timely exit from Sabattis Primary, just not knowing exactly how that's going to play out. We wanted to leave a little bit of cushion to have that building accessible. If staff are still working in that building, lights will still be on, they'll still be able to use the bathroom, access the water features, etc. But everything else has either been reallocated in the SPS closed version or reduced. So you'll see the staff and benefits line 77 through 89. If the building stays open, some of the repair and maintenance projects that Mark noted, he's put an increase in for that. Modest increase to the oil for Sabattis Primary, as we'll be close to that mark this year in line 100. And then starting with line 102, we get into the high school. So 102 through 114 is your salary and benefits line for custodial staff at the high school. 116 is one of those purchase property services that we actually reduced to be in line with actuals. A small increase to repair and maintenance as per the projects Mark outlined in line 118. And then you'll also see a slight increase to the liquid propane line on 125 at the high school. Yes, sir.
I mean, this isn't overly relevant, but I am curious. Why was the oil so expensive for actual in the high school? It was $90,000 compared to 2 years ago. It was $13,000.
Yeah. So the phase 3 project where 4 of the 5 schools transitioned to liquid propane was in that year, right?
Oh, so that was
you'll
paying for all the
see,
equipment?
right, if you look at the 2 years prior revised, you'll see a portion of that heating fuel shift up to a zeroed out account line in the year prior. So the liquid propane line in the 23-24 year was budgeted at 65,000. It was a great budgeting job for not knowing how that project was going to work
Yeah.
out. Like the
Yeah.
actuals came in really, really close to that. But you'll see that the oil line was almost zeroed out because this building transitioned to mostly using liquid propane and only using the oil jump in.
For
Mark.
hot water.
Thank you.
For hot water.
Yeah.
Okay, so
There we
Yeah.
go.
that makes sense.
And we have a huge tank.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's clearly overkill for the tank and just the hot water, but it's where we're at.
Why didn't they transfer the hot water tank to propane too?
I was not part of that, and had I been, I think that would have been the way I would have gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Huh.
But I think it's also because we have a tank issue. So
Yeah.
if we stop using that tank,
That's exactly right.
there is some codes. We have to take care of that tank properly, and the cost for that will be off the chart. So I'm certain that that's why they went with that. Would I have explored both? Yes, but I think probably that's why we went with the oil.
Yeah, and a lucky circumstance of that project too. I think we had only planned to have 2 tanks put on premises for propane, and we were running out of propane quicker than they expected to. So I think we got 2 free tanks as well. I mean,
Yeah, because we have 4 now, and
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a question about the new floor machine.
yes.
Because we have it on there whether Sabattis Primary is open or closed. I don't know if the machine at Sabattis Primary is one of the ones that's needed, and if that's
Well,
gonna.
part of the problem is we are running outdated old machines. So they're called T3s, round pads. Problems with them is we're having trouble repairing them. So these are so obsolete now that for a repairman to come in, we have a great guy, but he'll look all over the district, all over Maine to find parts for these machines. That is cost not effective. So for instance, we just got a new Tomcat for this building, and I used Tomcats at my previous district. Weird thing about them, right, is they're square pads. We have square rooms. They work so much better, but the time that it cuts off from the custodian's job from floor care is superior. So they're game changers, and it's definitely the way that I would like to see the district go.
Makes sense. And I did have another question. So we're expecting a 15% increase to our insurance. Is that also through the MEA trust?
no, no. No. Cheeky, Nicole. No.
It's getting late.
No, we go through Kai's, which is based out of Farmington. We've been with them for quite a long time, and they treated us well when we had that really large claim with the high school. But, when you have a claim of the size, I think it was over $500,000, that claim was
Yeah.
a couple years ago, it stays on your, forget that, it's similar to a medical loss ratio, but it stays on your record for a few years until it works its way out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to ask, line 101, equipment, what is that amount for?
So line 101
It says equipment.
for equipment.
It's Sabattis Primary.
Well, if Sabattis Primary is open, it's for floor care.
It's not Sabattis Prime.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yep.
All right.
I
Line
suspect we
100?
will not need it, Diane.
I was going to ask too, on your equipment, is there any other equipment that can be utilized from Sabattis Primary to bring over to any of the other schools?
100% yes.
Okay.
There's going to be good and bad. Same thing, of course, with food service, but we are going to strip it as bare as we can.
Okay.
Yep.
But you were asking about 100 though, right?
I'm all set.
101 is custodian.
No, 101. It's equipment.
On SPS open, it's equipment.
Oh, yeah, I switched to closed.
You're jumping ahead.
I
Jumping
know, that's
ahead.
because
She's
I was
eager.
looking to see if the machine was there, and it
Gotcha.
was, and then
Yep.
I didn't switch back. Sorry,
I had
guys.
written that too, line 51,
Yeah.
equipment.
So, starting with line 128, that's where the system-wide cost, so like our director of maintenance is within this subcategory of accounts. And the really big ticket item there is line 138. That's the SRO, right? Because that's a district-wide service that we have. So it's paid for and budgeted in that subsection of accounts. So you can see right now, this year, we had 70,000 in the budget for that. But based on the quote that we got from, remind me of Thank you. Androscoggin County Sheriff, that's an increase of $72,000 if we went with that contract.
Now, does that include their health benefits and other services as well?
It's subcontracting with that office to get that employee and pay for. And then the last section, starting with 139, the last physical plant that we have is the central office. So we do have a small number of maintenance lines.
I don't know if we could hear you again,
I'm sorry.
Sam.
So sorry. Starting
Gotta be
with line
friends.
139, we have our final physical plant is the central office. So that ends with the three numbers 9, 10. And so you'll see contracted services there. Snow removal, we had up at line 128, but it's moved down properly where it belongs to line 140. So no difference there, just moved. And then a small amount for repair and maintenance, telephone, our liquid propane at the central office, and electricity. So shifting over to the version with SPS closed and just buzzing you through really quickly, you'll notice that the Sabatis primary lines, like I had mentioned before, are zeroed out with the exception of utilities. So not all of these lines represent cuts, right? Some of them have been reallocated. So in December when we met, we talked about how the supply line would not be reduced, that it would be reallocated to the buildings that would have the staff and students that SPS currently have. And so you'll see that kind of throughout. You'll see increases at either Cary Ricker or Libby Tozier, but you'll see everything zeroed out within the Sabatis primary lines with the exception of those utilities and electricity.
Sam,
Yeah.
I know you said we had 2 months worth of services at Sabatis Primary in case we closed it. I guess, is there a contingency or a plan if it takes longer than the 2 months, if Sabatis doesn't take it back? I know real estate like that probably has a hard time selling.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think with any unplanned or unanticipated thing like that, we would have to just pause, reevaluate the budget as a whole, make a plan at that point, adjust, and move forward with a new plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about like snow removal contracts? Is that renegotiated every year? Does it go out for bid?
It's not renegotiated every year. I think we are in the last year, next year of a 3-year contract that we get into.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to revisit Scott's thing. The buses took $4,500, but all the electricity for all of central office is only $5,000. For those, I feel like there is some sort of like power drain or something going on
Okay.
with the.
We've got it noted
with
to
the
look into
buses.
that,
That seems crazy to me.
Sure.
With like all the printers and fax, all the computers, lights at central office.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really just sank in when
Yeah. Well, electricity, yeah.
Yep. Yep. So we'll look into that. We've got that as an action item. Sure. Yeah. All right. Any other questions before we move on to the last 2 cost centers in the general fund?
Actually, snow removal, do they clear the sidewalks and everything else for us?
No, they do not. That would be custodial.
Okay, thank you.
I will say this though, once in a blue moon, if we have a tractor go down or something, yeah, we would reach out and ask Larry, hey, could you hit our sidewalks, of course. But other than that, nope, we take care of it.
All right. So we have 2 cost centers left
Thank
in
you.
the general fund. Thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
And they should be really quick, hopefully. So cost center 10 is debt service. So this is where we have had our municipal payment for the Oak Hill Middle School project. So this fiscal year, we paid the final payment of that. So we paid our principal and interest payment in the fall, and we won't have a spring payment because it is done, paid off. So you'll notice that that is zeroed out in cost center 10. Yeah, a celebration.
Does that
right?
mean after this year we don't have a cost center 10?
Well, we have a cost center 10, but it has a $0 amount in the budget.
Okay.
And then cost center 11, So this is all other expenditures, and historically, this is where we had budgeted for an amount of money to be transferred into our school nutrition program from the general fund. So a transfer was done once a year for those monies to support the school nutrition. But when I came on, we decided to kind of tease that out and clean it up a little bit. So all of the school nutrition revenue lines now live in that fund. So this has been a $0 amount for the last 2 years, and so there's no change there.
Okay, so we're going to leave you with, food for thought here, right? So as you mull over what is the direction, where are we going to land, there's still information to come, which is the insurance is a big one. So what you have is the total for the general fund with it open, which is up 5.54%. If you add what we are anticipating, which is in the next slide, an increase of approximately 96,000, will be at 5.97% with that insurance adjustment. That's with Sabatis open. With Sabatis closed, we have that reduction across the board, and with those positions, and the operational will be at 3.71%. You add the insurance in, it's at 4.13%. So you can see that we won't know definitively until April 2nd when we will update everything so that you have all the new totals. And what we don't have for tonight directly is tax input. We're still working with the towns to confirm that. But you have all of things that you can be doing for homework. You can be looking at all these revenue slides that you have. And so you can look at what's the cost right now for required local, what's the cost for additional, what is the overall revenue streams, the fund balance, what we're going to propose for a capital improvement fund. And then we move into, so that's all your homework, because we're going to hit that on April 2nd. Matt?
Sorry, I just
That's
wanted
all
to
right.
circle back to what you were just saying about the MEA Benefits Trust.
Correct.
So with the possibility of Sabatis primary closing, that would be another 415,000. Did I hear that right? Another additional savings on top of?
No. If go back to those slides. So maybe I'm hearing you different. If we closed or open, what do you want to talk?
Oh, that's what I was trying to figure out.
415 is right.
I was trying to keep up with what you were saying.
Okay, yeah. So with it open,
Yep.
it's 1.2 million. With it closed, it's 840. So that's the savings there,
Yep.
right?
And that's
And
cost centers.
that's all that we've covered.
All 1 to 11.
Everything that we've covered, that's the differential there.
Yeah, that's the general fund cost centers
Right.
1 through 11.
That's because of the reduction with the IT, the
Yeah.
health
Correct.
staff, and the custodial. So there's a few different cost centers involved because of that's really just based on the health insurance increase.
Okay.
Okay. But yes, you know what, if you looked at what we had savings for staff, operational, that's going to be the difference there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I just did
I
used
know
the
you-
wrong numbers to do my math on
No,
that
you
one.
did it
you
right.
did it right. You did it right.
415.
415.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To just, I think what Matt was asking
Yeah.
is, what's the difference between the two budgets? So what's the savings with SPS closed? And
Yeah.
with the 18% health insurance, it is 415,000.
Okay. All right.
450. You're adding the same amount. Well, you're adding a little bit less when it comes out with the insurance adding. It's going to be a little bit different because of those positions.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
But everything will be added. But yes, it's a $400,000 difference there. So, which is significant when in the big picture of things.
Right.
Definitely. But then as you go through, you'll see what is our EPS, our state funds, what is our additional local, what is going to be our ask for the additional local, but what's our required local. So you'll see all that, so you can be absorbing that. And if you have questions, just reach out. We're going to have Jim be our finale because we're not going to cover nutrition tonight. That's a separate article. Remember, nutrition and adult ed are approved at the public hearing, right? So at the public budget meeting. So the public budget meeting, those two articles are voted on. They don't impact the referendum, okay? So Jim is unable to be with us on April 2nd, so he's going to go tonight, and then you'll at least have the adult ed information from the man who runs it.
Can I ask, Sam, can you give us, for next meeting, a rundown of 1 through 10 without the school resource officer position?
You mean reduce it by that total
Yeah.
amount?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to see
Are
that.
are you looking for just the cost center totals, the total budget amount?
Overall,
Okay.
total.
And you're talking about cut it completely? Okay.
So reduce cost center 9
Yeah.
and run it.
Yes.
Okay. Jim,
All set?
I am. How are you feeling?
Good.
Good.
Good
okay.
evening.
Still awake?
Yeah. So I'm just going to go over the slides that I put together for adult ed. Most of them are program participation slides. If you look at the first one, it's our graduation numbers. We've been
And
pretty.
hang on, Jim. If you're trying to find it, it's slide 49 is where he's starting.
Yeah, it's here.
The way things-
It's so we've been pretty consistent the last 3 years with our graduation numbers. This year is obviously anticipated because we have a couple months left of possibility of people coming in. So we're actually pretty close to that 8 right now. So I anticipate we'll at least make that, if not pass it. Then the next slide is enrollment for some of our workforce training, or some of our classes that we offer for the high school diploma. So again, if you look over the past 3 years, the high set is pretty steady. The diploma is pretty steady with 6 this year. Dual status is showing a little bit of an increase each year. And then our CASAS testing is something that we provide to students when they enter the program and when they exit the program to see what growth they had in our program. On the next slide, you have some of the other courses that we offer, part of our workforce training programs. First aid CPR, again, staying pretty steady. Defensive driving went down this year. We just didn't have enough interest in it. It's a tough course to try to run because a lot of our participants aren't ready to pay until they show up that night, and if we don't get payment, we don't run the course. So computer training stayed the same. You can see the other ones. The other one that stands out is substitute training, which I've been reporting on at the reports, has increased in numbers there. We didn't offer any kind of bus certification prep. We did that last year. Enrichment is down a little bit from last year at 107. And then if you look at the next slide, it's our total enrollment. Again, because of some of those classes being a little bit lower, we're down 29 from last year. But budget.
What's enrichment?
Enrichment is crochet, pickleball,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
driver's eds
Okay.
folded
Community.
into
Community.
enrichment. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The biggest budget impact this year is we had a $100 increase for our membership to Maine Adult Education Association, and I was looking to add a position we previously had, not to the amount, but a third person in the office to help out with data input and just with me at games at the crucial time, somebody else in the office to help test and take students in when I'm not there.
All right, so that brings us to slide 53, which is the adult ed summary slide. So there's no change in this program, in this fund, between SPS being open or closed. You'll see that the fund is up just over 4,000 from last year's budget request. And just wanted to know on slide 54, just seeing the local contribution to the program over the last several years. So again, at the bottom, you'll note no change with the version of SPS open or closed, but you will see a lower dollar amount asked for a tax contribution from previous years. And then slide 55, this is the revenue that funds the adult ed program. So you can see that Jim has been working hard in the last couple of years to leverage some grant revenue from the AFLA grant, which is, I'm not going to remember what the acronym stands for. Family Literacy Act is the last 3 letters. And then you'll see the adjustment to state subsidy. So I did just put a note there. That's the projected state subsidy for FY26. It usually comes in pretty close to what we get for the notice that we budget on. But you will see in future years that subsidy increase from the previous year is reflecting a 2 years past change from a half-time director to a full-time director. So you'll see that cut off in the next years because we've gone back down to a half-time director. But it's similar to our other funding calculations. It's a 2-year delay for the data that we submit. And Katie, you're on.
Well, that's the finale for tonight.
That's the finale for tonight.
Robbie?
Yeah, Jim, I know we have the credit recovery program.
Yep.
And I know that isn't, you know, it's not bringing money into the program. I know it's a program that we have that kids use. But I was just wondering, in the enrichment program, how that money gets put back into the system? Is it 1-for-1? I mean, we're not making a lot of money on it? Or are we just trying to break out even?
For the enrichment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a couple ways. We don't offer the class if we
Right.
don't break even.
Right.
Sometimes we do a 90-10 split with the instructor where they receive 90% of the revenue.
Right.
We receive 10 for what we offer. On one of those slides, you had the AFLA and then you had the other 2,000. That's where those enrichment fee
Okay. Yeah.
revenue goes.
All right.
And I'm so sorry, we do have line by line for adult ed. So it's in the board folder, and you've got the revenue and the expenses here. Really, the only changes notable are what Jim mentioned, the $2,000 in line 2 for some clerical support that he mentioned. And then if you look at the 6,500 lines, which starts with 29, we overspent that category this year. So he built in some additional funds for staffing for that cluster of accounts.
Getting back to the credit recovery, is there a cost for us for credit recovery and instructors and stuff like that?
Yeah, we use our instructor,
Right.
and that's why we're over a little bit, is because we've taken on more credit recovery. It's still during the same time frame. Sometimes it may go over a little bit. They may need to still stay a little bit later, but there's no cost to it if it's in the same time frame that
Right,
we have other
okay.
students
Yeah,
there.
that's what I wanted to get across. So it's not,
We typically try to do it on the same nights that we do high school diploma because then our instructor can bounce around.
Right,
It's
okay.
hard to do testing with that going on
right,
because
yeah.
they're
But
testing.
we could just do the testing that night and then have credit recovery pick up the next week.
Yeah, I mean, we with the credit recovery, they to recover that credit, we require them to come for 15 weeks, 3 hours a week. So we try to put all those on the same night.
Yeah, okay.
The clerical, I've noticed that in a couple different cost centers. Is that the same staff person?
No, so clerical, depending on the cost center, would be like in cost center 7, school administration, that is your office administrative assistants. In cost center 6, clerical is for office of the superintendent. That's the administrative assistant for Superintendent Grondin. Clerical in fiscal services in that same cost center is my accounts payable specialist and payroll specialist. And I'm trying to think where else would it be. There's one in guidance at the high school. So in cost center 5, you'll see clerical for the guidance administrative assistant here in the high school. And special education. You'll see that as well. So it's the same descriptor, but it's administrative assistants within those departments.
So, line item 2, this person's salary is $2,000.
Oh, no, this would be like a very
It's
part-time,
hours.
hourly to help as needed, as Jim mentioned. So like him being the athletic director and the adult ed, he's not free to facilitate some of the testing at the times that students need to come in to do testing because he's committed to games, being at games, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then just also getting some support entering data for his reports that he has to do as well. So it's a very, very like couple of
this would-
hours a
so
week.
It'd be
or-
less than 5 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is for the adult ed director.
Well, it's for the program. It's to have additional support when he's not available. So it's 5 hours a week. It's just covering.
Okay,
because-
so I changed my, so who is it? Who's doing that? Is it an assistant?
It's not a regular, it's a person that would agree to do
Right.
it.
We
thought
had
it
it
was
a
different.
few years back and it was cut, and so I'm asking for part of it back.
I understand, but
Like if somebody usually works, like our adult ed teacher is a teacher for Oak Hill.
yeah.
And so then we pay them for their
So
work
it's
with
almost
adult ed.
like a stipend.
It could have
in a
been,
way.
yeah. Matter of fact, we talked about that. Would it be a so, yeah. So it's
Would
gonna
there
be
an
hourly.
advantage of doing that as far as like taxation and contribution for all these other items as far as
The hours gives flexibility on who can do it. Once you do a stipend, you have to have somebody commit to it. This gives
Right.
flexibility. He might have somebody in the fall do it, somebody in the winter do it, somebody in the spring do it.
there is an advantage though doing payroll versus stipend versus something like this, right?
Are you talking about the work that goes into it, or just like the dollar amount taxes?
No, a cost savings as far as like your
Right, no, same thing. Mm-hmm.
no, I'm talking like your FICA.
I mean, there's a benefit to the contractor. Like if you're getting a stipend, you're getting 1099 potentially, for not with a school.
Not usually.
So wouldn't the stipend just go to their salary? I think what you're
Just
trying to
goes to
get
their
at is if it's a stipend, it's a one-time payment.
Right, exactly.
No, our
we get
stipends by
spread out.
contract, they can either have them in 3 payments spread throughout the season, every 2 weeks, so it can go into their paycheck regularly, or end of season lump sum.
I think it all depends, like on where you're on your salary scale and tax bracket and all that fun stuff.
By doing it at 2,000, like for the next year, if it was a stipend, it might go up because that person, if they've done it that first year, then it could go up the next year. Where you keep it at 2,000, then you don't have to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions for Jim? For adult ed? All right, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, so like Katie said, we're going to shift a little bit, and we will have to come back on April 2nd for a budget workshop. Next week is our regular meeting.
Finance and facility as well, right?
Mhm.
For next week, just
Yep.
double
That's
checking.
next week.
Yep.
Yeah, next week.
Yep.
Just pay attention to the agenda for your committees and start times, because we kind of fiddled with that a bit.
Is that okay?
Okay. Yep, and then, okay, so is that what you got started here, Sam? Sam wants to review?
Nope,
No,
I
she
was
wants
just
to
gonna
review
go
what she's
over
been
the data requests
Yes.
from the board to make sure I didn't miss anything. So, the electricity lines for the busing, right, reviewing that. Checking in with Sabatis and Litchfield about gas maintenance pumps. I'll defer to Sheena on that. And potentially inquiring with staff about custodial upkeep. The bus depot question, I'm gonna just like park that in finance and facilities as a starting point, if that's okay.
Yes.
And then an inquiry about parking lot lighting, evaluating, potentially improving that, and then a request to see the cost centers and budget totals with the SRO removed. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you. What is up here? What was this?
That was just a reminder, well, it's changed because we just, that was, if we made it through everything.
We didn't make
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know if somebody was updating it real time or not. Okay.
and that. So packed snacks.
Pack snacks. I know, we didn't have snacks.
Wait a
out
minute.
here.
What?
I'll bring
What?
cookies.
And what? What is this?
Everything
Yep. They don't have to be.
And this. Gotcha. I was. Where's the and?
I'll bring some.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
It's not a meeting, so I have to so I don't have to adjourn.
Right.
It's a workshop. I eyes hurt so bad from these lights.
Okay. My feet are freezing.